He didn't conquer the shinobi world. He cured it by murdering choice itself. Soul magic, chrono bullshit, golden eyes everywhere. The last free man is Orochimaru, sitting in a cave, watching the golden sky like the punchline to a cosmic joke. This is pure, beautiful nightmare fuel. Watch the whole thing.
Rain hit the streets of Konoha like gunfire the night everything changed. 3 blocks from the merchant district, 2 ambush squads tore into each other with the kind of violence reserved for people who genuinely believed they were righteous. Tanto blades punched through ribs. A fire release technique caught a rooftop and turned 3 apartments into a screaming furnace. A woman carrying a toddler ran through a crossfire of shuriken and took 2 in the back before she made it around the corner. The toddler was still crying when she stopped moving. Both sides wore Konoha's insignia. Both sides screamed about duty. In the alley between a shuttered ramen stand and a dumpster overflowing with rotted vegetables, a child watched all of it, 8 years old. White blonde hair plastered to his skull by the downpour, blue eyes that caught the firelight from the burning apartments 3 rooftops over. He was small for his age, thin from meals that came irregularly, and often from garbage cans behind restaurants that threw things at him when he came through the front door. He wore a shirt 2 sizes too large that had been white once and was gray now, and shorts that ended below his knees because he couldn't afford ones that fit. He should have been crying. Any 8-year-old watching people die should cry or scream or run. Naruto Uzumaki tilted his head 3 degrees to the left and watched a kunai pin an Anbu operative's hand to a wooden beam. The man screamed. His partner put a blade through the attacker's throat. Blood mixed with rainwater and flowed past Naruto's bare feet in the gutter. He blinked once, and then the memories came. They hit like a dam breaking. 1,000 lifetimes of golden throne rooms and soul-deep magic, of kingdoms burning and being rebuilt, of a man who had watched humanity destroy itself across centuries and decided with the patience of a saint and the conviction of a god that the problem was freedom itself. The Spade Kingdom's wars, the Clover Kingdom's corruption, the endless grinding machine of human ambition crushing human bodies beneath its gears and calling the carnage progress. A man named Lucius Zogratis, the final wizard king, the supreme architect of perfect salvation, who had looked at the totality of human suffering and concluded that the merciful thing, the loving thing, the only rational response was to end all of it. Every free choice, every independent soul, every capacity for humans to hurt each other, replace them with something better, something peaceful, something obedient, something perfect. The memories settled into Naruto's skull like a crown finding the head it was always meant for. They fit. That was the terrifying part. They fit perfectly. He looked up at the burning building. He looked at the dead woman with the toddler. He looked at the 2 ambush squads retreating in opposite directions, leaving bodies in the street for morning cleanup crews to bag like garbage. "The will of fire," he said to the rain. His voice was small and young and completely steady. How poetic. They call child sacrifice by a prettier name and everyone kneels. Something vast stirred inside him. Something ancient and full of hatred that it had been waiting 9 years for this vessel to crack open so it could flood in and take control. Naruto felt the pull. The 9-tailed fox, Kurama, the force of nature sealed inside his gut since the night of his birth, surging forward with killing intent so massive it would have liquefied the consciousness of any normal 8-year-old. Naruto closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was standing somewhere else. Every Jinchuriki before him had experienced the mindscape as a sewer. Dripping pipes, ankle-deep water, a cage of impossible proportions holding something made of hatred and fire, the aesthetic of imprisonment, the visual language of a system designed to contain something terrible. Naruto's mindscape was a cathedral. Gold light poured from vaulted ceilings, so high they disappeared into radiance. The floor was white marble veined with threads of luminous amber. Pillars rose in symmetrical rows, ornate, carved with symbols that predated shinobi civilization by millennia. At the far end of the vast hall, where an altar might be, there stood what remained of the seal, a lattice of golden bars, still massive, still imposing, but wrong now, out of place. A prison sitting in the middle of a palace. Behind those bars, 9 tails of corrosive red chakra whipped and thrashed. Eyes the size of houses blazed with an ancient, bottomless fury that had been accumulating since the dawn of the tailed beasts. Kurama looked down at the child standing before his cage and opened his mouth to roar. The sound should have broken Naruto's mind. The killing intent alone was a weapon. The concentrated desire to destroy everything in range compressed into a frequency that bypassed the ears and hit the survival instincts directly. Generations of shinobi had faced killing intent. This was something else entirely. This was the rage of a creature that had existed since the Sage of Six Paths walked the earth, distilled and focused into a single point of obliterating pressure. Naruto walked forward. His bare feet made soft sounds on the marble. He walked through the killing intent, the way a man walks through a light breeze, acknowledging its existence, unbothered by its force. His expression was the thing that made Kurama hesitate. For a fraction of a second, the ancient fox faltered, because the child was smiling. It was a warm smile, gentle, the kind of smile a parent gives a frightened animal, patient, knowing, and underneath it, underneath the warmth and the softness and the genuine, visible compassion, there was something that made the 9-tailed fox feel, for the first time in its entire existence, like it was the smaller thing in the room. "You have carried so much anger," Naruto said. His voice echoed in the cathedral space. It was a child's voice, but the cadence was wrong. Too measured, too unhurried, too certain. Centuries of it. Every Jinchuriki before me used you as a battery. Every human you encountered saw you as a weapon to be aimed or a monster to be feared. You have been alone in your hatred for so long that you have forgotten what anything else feels like. Kurama's tail stilled. The fox was staring. "I understand," Naruto continued. He was at the bars now, close enough to touch. "I understand because I have watched worlds burn the same way you have. I have watched humanity choose violence over and over, generation after generation, and I have felt the same exhaustion you feel." He raised one hand. His palm began to glow, white gold light, soft and steady, pulsing with something that was definitively, absolutely, fundamentally different from chakra. "But unlike you, I found the answer." Kurama finally spoke. His voice was a tectonic event, the sound of continents shifting. "What are you?" Naruto pressed his glowing palm against the cage bars. "I am your salvation. Soul magic." The glow exploded outward. White gold light flooded through the bars like sunlight through a cathedral window, wrapping around the 9-tails' massive form in threads of luminous power that sank through fur and flesh and chakra until they reached the core. The place where Kurama's consciousness lived. The soul of the beast. Kurama thrashed. The sound was cataclysmic. 9 tails the size of mountains slamming against the cage, against the cathedral walls, against the very fabric of the mindscape. Red chakra erupted in a tidal wave. The marble floor cracked. Pillars buckled. The golden ceiling flickered. Naruto held on. His small hand pressed against the bars, glowing brighter with every second, and his expression did not change. The warmth remained. The compassion remained. The absolute, unshakable certainty that what he was doing was correct and kind and necessary. It radiated off him like heat from a furnace. Inside Kurama, something was being rewritten. The rage, that bottomless ancient fury that had sustained the 9-tails through a millennium of imprisonment and abuse, began to dissolve. It did not fight the light. It could not. Soul magic operated on a level that transcended physical resistance or spiritual defenses. It reached into the fundamental architecture of a being's identity and altered it at the source. Kurama felt it happening. He felt the hatred drain out of him like blood from a wound. He felt the bitterness, the justified, earned, agonizing bitterness of 1,000 years of chains evaporate like steam. He felt the memories remain, but the emotions attached to them fade to nothing. He could remember being sealed. He could remember being used. But the anger about it was disappearing, and in its place there was only peace. A vast, total, smothering peace that felt like drowning in warm water. He opened his mouth to scream. What came out was silence. The cage bars dissolved. They faded like morning frost in sunlight, gone between one blink and the next. The seal was irrelevant now. You do not need a cage for something that has nowhere it wants to go. Kurama's form began to change. The corrosive red chakra, that toxic, burning energy that had defined the Nine Tails since its creation, shifted spectrum. Red became gold. Gold became white. The massive fox shape remained, but the texture of it transformed. Where there had been fur like wildfire, there was now fur like starlight. Where there had been eyes full of murder, there were now eyes full of nothing at all. The tails stopped thrashing. They folded gently against the creature's flanks. Kurama, the being that had fought Hashirama Senju to a standstill, that had nearly destroyed Konoha twice, that represented 1/9 of the total power of the Sage of Six Paths himself, lowered his colossal head and bowed. The golden cathedral filled with warm light. Naruto withdrew his hand from where the cage used to be. He looked up at the vast, luminous, empty-eyed creature he had just unmade and felt something that Lucius Zogratis had felt many times before. Satisfaction. The satisfaction of a surgeon removing a tumor. The satisfaction of a god correcting an error in his creation. "The world is terribly broken," Naruto said, his voice barely above a whisper, echoing through the golden space like a prayer. "But do not worry, I will heal it all." He opened his eyes. The rain was still falling. The burning apartment had collapsed in on itself while he was gone. Somewhere, a dog was barking at the flames. Naruto looked down at his hands. The glow had faded, but he could feel it. The vast reservoir of power sitting inside his chest like a second heart. Kurama's chakra was still there, still immense, still capable of leveling mountains. But it was his now, fully, completely, unconditionally. The beast would never resist him. The beast could never resist him. There was nothing left to resist with. His first paladin, his first proof of concept. He looked up at the Hokage monument. 4 stone faces carved into the mountainside, looking down over the village with permanent, unseeing eyes. The will of fire. The legacy of men who had built a system on the bones of children and called it peace. Naruto smiled at them. Then he turned and walked back toward his apartment. He had plans to make. He had a role to play. The cheerful orphan, the knucklehead genin, the harmless idiot that the village tolerated because the 4th Hokage had asked them to. 4 more years. 4 years of watching, learning, growing, allowing the Shinobi Academy to teach him things he had already mastered in a previous life's worth of study. 4 years of smiling at classmates who called him dead last. 4 years of eating ramen with the old man at Ichiraku's and laughing too loud and wearing orange and pretending that the world was not something he intended to fundamentally restructure from the atomic level up. The Wizard King had learned patience across decades of preparation. Naruto had inherited that patience alongside everything else. He had all the time in the world. Literally. 4 years passed. The 3rd Hokage reviewed the Academy reports on Naruto Uzumaki with a mixture of relief and lingering unease that he could never quite articulate. The boy was doing well, socially engaged, academically improving. His instructors reported energy, enthusiasm, and a generally positive attitude that suggested the Jinchuriki was integrating successfully despite the village's ongoing prejudice. Hiruzen signed the reports and filed them. He missed the part where every single one of Naruto's instructors, in their private notes, had used some variation of the same phrase, something about that kid's eyes. None of them could explain it. None of them tried particularly hard. It was easier to note it and move on than to sit with the feeling. The way Naruto's gaze lingered a half-second too long. The way his smile was always perfectly timed. The way he moved through social interactions like a man navigating a board game he had already won. Iruka-sensei came closest to the truth. In a personal journal he would never show anyone, he wrote, "When Naruto looks at me, I feel like he's reading something I can't see, like he already knows what I'm going to say, like he's being kind by letting me finish the sentence." The graduation exam came and went. Naruto passed without incident, a performance carefully calibrated to place him in the middle of the class, strong enough to graduate. Weak enough to be underestimated by everyone who mattered, he was assigned to Team 7. Kakashi Hatake, Jonin Sensei, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno. Naruto received the team assignment with a smile that reached his eyes and absolutely nowhere else. "Perfect," he murmured, looking at the sheet. The broken Avenger and the girl searching for purpose. What a beautiful canvas. The morning of the bell test dawned clear and cold. Kakashi Hatake arrived at Training Ground 3 at 10:47 a.m., 2 hours and 47 minutes late, fully prepared for the usual reception. Genin complaints, demands for explanation, the standard cocktail of impatience and youthful entitlement that he had dealt with from every potential squad for the past 6 years, all of whom he had failed, all of whom had disappointed him. He landed on the fence post overlooking the training field and looked down. Sasuke Uchiha stood against a tree with his arms crossed, radiating the aggressive indifference that seemed hardwired into every Uchiha who survived past puberty. Sakura sat on the grass nearby, nervously adjusting her headband. Naruto Uzumaki sat on a wooden log in the center of the clearing. Kakashi's eye narrowed. The boy was wearing white, a long, flowing robe of pristine white fabric that caught the early light and seemed to glow faintly at the edges. Entirely wrong for a genin, entirely wrong for a 12-year-old, entirely wrong for every expectation Kakashi had built from 6 years of reading Academy reports about an orange-clad prankster. His hands were folded in his lap. His posture was impeccable, spine straight, shoulders relaxed, chin level. He was watching the sunrise over the eastern tree line with an expression of absolute serenity. On his forehead, where the Konoha headband should have been, there was a mark. A black, star-shaped brand that seemed to absorb the light around it. Every alarm in Kakashi Hatake's body went off simultaneously. "Yo," Kakashi said, landing lightly in front of the three. He raised one hand in greeting. "Sorry I'm late. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way." Sasuke's scowl intensified. Sakura made a frustrated sound. Naruto turned his head from the sunrise and looked at Kakashi. The smile that crossed his face was warm, genuine, and made something at the base of Kakashi's spine clench like a fist. "Punctuality is a virtue, Sensei. But I forgive you. 3 words should not sound like that. 3 words should not carry the weight of a benediction, of something being granted from above." Kakashi was a veteran of the Third Shinobi World War. He had fought alongside the 4th Hokage. He had killed people whose names would never leave the classified files, and a 12-year-old in white robes had just made him feel like he was the student. "Right," Kakashi said, forcing his voice to stay level. He pulled out 2 bells and dangled them. "The exercise is simple. Take these from me before noon. Come at me with everything you have, or you won't succeed." Sasuke pushed off the tree. His Sharingan wasn't active, he was saving it, but his body language said everything. Ready, eager, burning for validation. Sakura stood, fists clenched, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Naruto remained seated on the log. "Begin," Kakashi said. Sasuke launched forward, a blur of speed and textbook taijutsu, impressive for a genin, honestly above average by a meaningful margin. Kakashi caught his fist, redirected his momentum, planted a knee in his stomach, and sent him rolling across the grass in under 4 seconds. Sasuke hit the ground coughing. Sakura came from behind, a kunai thrust aimed at the belt where the bells hung. Kakashi sidestepped without looking and put 2 fingers on her forehead. She froze. He pushed gently and she sat down hard on the grass, eyes wide. "2 down," Kakashi said. He turned to face the log. Naruto was standing now. He had risen from the log at some point during the 2 brief exchanges, and he was facing Kakashi with his hands at his sides and that same serene, warm expression. The white robes caught the morning breeze. The black mark on his forehead seemed to pulse once. A trick of the light, maybe, or maybe something else entirely. "Shall we?" Naruto said. Kakashi decided in that instant to go hard. Something about this kid, something about the way the air pressure changed around him, something about the way gravity felt heavier within 3 meters of his body, demanded a real response. Kakashi was a jonin. He had faced Kage-level opponents. He knew what power felt like when it entered a room. He closed the distance in a body flicker. Full speed, no hesitation. His right hand reached for the collar of Naruto's robe, a grab that would transition into a throw, a pin, an immediate and definitive end to whatever this feeling was. Naruto raised 2 fingers. Chronostasis. Pale gold light bloomed from those 2 extended fingers like sunrise compressed into a single point. The light expanded, a sphere maybe 2 feet in diameter, perfectly round, perfectly luminous, wrapping around Kakashi's right arm from elbow to fingertips. His arm stopped. Kakashi pulled. Every muscle in his shoulder, his back, his core, everything engaged. He pulled with the strength of a man who could summon earth walls with a punch and outrun most lightning techniques on foot. His arm did not move. It was frozen, suspended in a bubble of golden light. Every muscle fiber locked at the exact moment of maximum extension. His fingers were still reaching for Naruto's collar, still reaching, forever reaching, unable to close the final 2 inches. The look on Kakashi Hatake's face was something that would haunt Sasuke and Sakura for the rest of their natural lives. It was the look of a man who understood fighting at a fundamental level, who had built his entire existence around the mastery of combat and the reading of threats, encountering something that broke his framework. His visible eye was wide. His pupil had contracted to a pinpoint. His mouth, hidden behind the mask, was open. He was not looking at the golden sphere. He was looking at Naruto's face, because the boy was still smiling. That same warm, patient, compassionate smile. As if Kakashi's entire attack, the full speed of one of Konoha's premier jonin, had been the equivalent of a child tugging on his sleeve for attention. What? Kakashi's voice came out as a rasp. What is this? Naruto stepped closer. His movement was unhurried, each step placed with the grace of someone who has never once in their life needed to rush toward anything. He reached out with one hand and placed it gently against Kakashi's chest, over his heart. The touch was light, barely any pressure at all. But Kakashi felt something happen that no genjutsu, no ninjutsu, no technique in his considerable experience had ever produced. He felt seen. He felt something reach through his chest, through his flak jacket, through his ribs, through his muscle and bone, and touch the thing underneath. The thing he had been building walls around since he was 13 years old. The thing made of Obito's crushed body under a boulder, Ren's blood on his hand, his father's body on the floor, Sensei's cold form on the altar. Every year of going through the motions of living while something inside him had been dead since the Third War. Kakashi gasped. Your soul carries too much grief, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto's voice was soft, impossibly soft. The genuine sorrow in it was the worst part because it was real. This child felt sorry for him. This child, who was doing something to his body that violated every principle of combat Kakashi understood, was looking at him with the kind of pity that suggested Kakashi was the one in danger here. When my kingdom comes, I will erase that pain. Naruto withdrew his hand. He reached past the frozen arm, casually, with the ease of a man reaching past a lamppost, and unclipped both bells from Kakashi's vest. The golden sphere around Kakashi's arm flickered and dissolved. Blood flow returned. Kakashi stumbled back 3 steps, clutching his forearm with the opposite hand, staring. Naruto turned and tossed both bells over his shoulder without looking. One landed in Sasuke's lap, one landed in Sakura's open hand. I have no need for tests, Naruto said, his back to all 3 of them now. He was looking at the sunrise again. The future is already written. For 30 seconds, the training ground was completely still. Sasuke looked at the bell in his lap. He looked at Naruto. He looked back at the bell. His hands were shaking. He could not identify the emotion causing the shaking, and that made it worse. Sakura held her bell in a white-knuckled grip. Her mouth was opening and closing. She wanted to say something, to ask a question, to demand an explanation, to scream, but words wouldn't form. Something in the back of her brain, some ancient primate survival mechanism that predated language, was screaming at her to run and keep running until she couldn't see those white robes anymore. Kakashi straightened up. He looked at Naruto's back. He looked at the black mark on his forehead. He looked at his own hand, the one that had been frozen in time by a 12-year-old genin who shouldn't know anything more advanced than a basic substitution jutsu. Team 7 passes, Kakashi said. His voice was flat, toneless, the voice of a man processing something that his framework could not accommodate. Report tomorrow, same time. He was gone before anyone could respond. Body flicker. He needed to be somewhere else, anywhere else. That night, Kakashi Harate wrote a report in his apartment. He wrote it by hand because typing felt too impersonal for something this important. He wrote 3 pages. He crossed them out. He wrote 2 more. He crossed those out too. Finally, he wrote a single paragraph. Team 7 is cleared. Naruto Uzumaki requires immediate independent observation. Threat level, unknown. Recommend surveillance at highest available tier. The boy demonstrated an ability that I cannot categorize within any known framework of ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, or kekkei genkai. He froze my arm in space-time with 2 fingers and read my emotional history with a palm on my chest. He did both without visible effort or chakra expenditure. I am a jonin. I was helpless. I have no assessment for what this means. He looked at the paper for a long time. Then he folded it and put it in a drawer he would never open again. He could not bring himself to send it, because if he sent it, someone would investigate. And if they investigated, they would confront Naruto. And if they confronted Naruto, Kakashi did not know what would happen. But his gut, his instinct, the part of him that had survived 1,000 battles by trusting the animal feeling in his spine, told him with absolute certainty. Whoever confronted Naruto Uzumaki would lose. Not would risk losing, would lose. The next few weeks passed in a haze of D-rank missions that Naruto completed with the beatific patience of a man doing charity work. He weeded gardens with perfect posture. He painted fences without a single drop of paint on his white robes. He found the missing cat Tora with the efficiency of someone who could sense the weight of every soul in a 2-mile radius. Sasuke watched him the way a hawk watches something that might be prey or might be a predator. It hasn't classified yet. Sakura watched him the way a deer watches headlights. Kakashi watched him the way a man watches a ticking device when he can't find the timer. None of them said anything. It was easier to pretend. The bell test had been weird, sure, but everything was normal now, right? Naruto was doing missions. Naruto was being cooperative. Naruto was smiling and polite and occasionally cracked a joke with such perfect timing that everyone laughed before they remembered they were uncomfortable. It was fine. Everything was fine. Until Wave Country. The mission briefing was standard. Escort the bridge builder Tazuna to Wave Country. Protect him from bandits and highwaymen. Come home. C rank. Routine. The kind of mission that Genin teams got assigned as a stepping stone between chasing cats and real combat. They were 2 hours outside of Konoha when the Demon Brothers attacked. The chain snaked out from the tree line. It wrapped around Kakashi in under a second. The 2 Chunin-level missing nin pulled hard, and the chain bit through what appeared to be their Jonin sensei. Gore splattered the road. Sasuke moved, kunai out, positioning himself between the attackers and the client. Sakura screamed. Naruto stood still. The Demon Brothers surged forward, claws dripping with poison, angling for Tazuna. They were fast for Chunin, aggressive, well coordinated. Naruto raised one hand, casually, the way someone signals a waiter. Chronostasis Gregora. 2 spheres of golden light materialized, one around each brother. They froze midair, poison claws extended, faces contorted in their attack expressions, completely and totally immobilized. The spheres hung in the air like ornaments. Inside them, the Demon Brothers' eyes darted frantically, the only muscles still functional. They could see. They could not move. They could not breathe. Kakashi emerged from the tree line where his substitution had placed him, looked at the 2 frozen attackers, and said nothing for several seconds. "Well," he said finally, "that's one way to handle it." Naruto walked past the frozen Demon Brothers without looking at them. He approached Tazuna, who had gone paper white and was gripping his sake bottle like a lifeline. "Bridge builder," Naruto said pleasantly. "I believe you have been dishonest about the threat level of this mission. People are coming for you who are significantly more dangerous than these 2. He smiled. "That's perfectly fine. I was hoping for something interesting." The bridge. 4 days later. Morning mist thick enough to cut. Kakashi felt the killing intent before the technique landed. He grabbed Tazuna and pulled him down a half second before the massive cleaving blade spun over their heads. A helicopter of razor steel that embedded itself in a tree trunk deep enough to hold a man's weight. Zabuza Momochi stood on the handle. Tall, bandaged face, bare chest, the body of a man who had been killing since he was a child and had never stopped. He looked down at Team 7 with the lazy amusement of a predator surveying herd animals. "Kakashi of the Sharingan," he said. "And 3 baby Genin. This will be fast." He formed the hand sign. "Hidden mist jutsu." The mist rolled in, thick, impenetrable, the kind of concealment that turned every direction into a kill zone. Inside it, Zabuza's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. 8 points. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Which one shall I strike first? Sasuke's hands trembled on his kunai. The killing intent was physical, a weight pressing on his chest, compressing his lungs, making each breath a conscious effort. Sakura was frozen, tears running down her cheeks without her permission. She couldn't think. She couldn't move. Kakashi revealed his Sharingan. His body was coiled, ready. This was a serious opponent. A rank, 7 swordsman of the mist, a man who had attempted a coup against Hokage. And then Naruto stepped forward. His white robes caught what little light remained in the mist. His expression was serene, untouched by the killing intent, untouched by the pressure, untouched by the primal fear that had reduced his teammates to shaking wrecks. He looked like a man who had wandered into a thunderstorm and found the rain pleasant. Such a violent soul, he said, addressing the mist. His voice carried through it like a bell. Centuries of grief compressed into rage. How exhausting it must be. Let me cleanse you. The mist itself seemed to hesitate. Naruto raised one hand toward the wall of white. Chrono-anastasis. Golden light erupted from his palm. It spread outward in a wave, and wherever it touched the mist, the water molecules began to reverse. The technique itself unwound, the jutsu deconstructed. Water vapor that had been summoned forward in time was pushed backward to the moment before it existed. The hidden mist jutsu didn't dispel, it unhappened, like pressing rewind on a tape. In 3 seconds, the air was crystal clear. Zabuza stood 20 meters away, executioner's blade in hand, and for the first time in a very long career of killing people, his eyes were wide. What the hell was that? He said. Naruto smiled. A correction. Zabuza was a man who had survived by never hesitating. He didn't hesitate now. 20 years of muscle memory launched him forward. Executioner's blade raised high, body committed, the full force of a man who had cleaved through chakra-reinforced walls aimed at the neck of a 12-year-old in white. The blade came down. Naruto raised one finger. Chrono bind. Golden light wrapped around the executioner's blade like ivy climbing a wall. Zabuza felt the resistance immediately. The blade slowed, then stopped, locked in a cocoon of luminous temporal energy, and then he watched his weapon age. Rust bloomed across the flat of the blade like flowers in fast-forward spring. Deep brown oxidation spreading from the point of light contact outward, eating the mirror polish, corrupting the steel. Cracks followed. Stress fractures that would have taken decades of use compressed into seconds. The metal screamed, a sound that steel makes when its molecular structure fails. And then the executioner's blade, the legendary weapon that had been passed down through the 7 swordsmen of the mist for generations, crumbled. It fell from Zabuza's hands in fragments, shards of rust hitting the bridge surface with pathetic tinkling sounds. A legendary weapon reduced to garbage in 4 seconds. Zabuza stared at his empty hands. He looked up at Naruto. And Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist, the man who had murdered his entire graduating class at age 9, who had attempted a coup against the 4th Mizukage, who had never in his entire career felt outmatched by anyone below Kage level, stood completely still. His mouth was open behind the bandages. His fingers twitched at his sides. He was trying to form a hand sign, any hand sign, water dragon, water clone, anything, but his body would not obey him. Because his body knew something his pride had not caught up with yet. It was over. Whatever this was, whatever this child was, it was so far beyond him that fighting was the same as suicide with extra steps. Kakashi's Sharingan eye was spinning wildly, trying to analyze what it was seeing. But there was no chakra signature to copy. There were no hand signs to memorize. Whatever Naruto was using did not fit within the framework that the Sharingan was designed to record. Sasuke's jaw was hanging open. He had never seen Kakashi look this way, helpless, outpaced, irrelevant. And he had never seen anyone, anything, reduce a weapon to dust with a finger. His Sharingan activated involuntarily, 2 tomoe spinning in each eye, and it told him nothing. Nothing it could read. Nothing it could understand. Sakura had stopped breathing. Naruto walked towards Zabuza. Each step was unhurried. The distance between them closed like an inevitability, like watching a glacier advance, except the glacier was 12 years old and smiled like a sunrise. Zabuza finally managed to move. He stepped back. 1 step, 2. Stay back, he said. His voice cracked on it. The demon of the mist's voice cracked. "What are you?" Naruto reached him. He was a third of Zabuza's height. He had to look up to meet the man's eyes. The contrast was absurd, a massive scarred killer and a child in white, but the dynamic was obvious to everyone watching. The child was the predator here. "I am your peace," Naruto said gently. He placed both palms on the sides of Zabuza's head. Zabuza's hands came up, an instinctive grab, trying to rip the child away. But the moment Naruto's palms made contact, Zabuza's arms went slack. His eyes went wide, every muscle in his body locked. Soul magic, paladin. Light exploded from the point of contact. White gold radiance poured into Zabuza through Naruto's palms, flooding through the man's skull, his spine, his chakra network, his soul. Inside Zabuza, in the place where his identity lived, something catastrophic was happening. Every memory remained. Every skill remained. The taijutsu, the water release mastery, the silent killing technique, the decades of combat experience, all preserved, perfectly intact. What changed was everything underneath. The will that drove those skills, the desire that chose when to use them, the self that decided. That self was being unmade, rewritten, rebuilt from the foundation up into something that served a single purpose. Zabuza's knees buckled. He went down hard, crashing onto the bridge surface. Naruto's hands stayed on his head, light still pouring, still rewriting, still converting. Zabuza's bandages unraveled. His face was visible, scarred, angular and contorting through expressions faster than the eye could track. Pain, horror, something like grief. And then, between 1 second and the next, nothing. His face went blank. His eyes lost their light. They didn't close, they emptied. The fierce predatory intelligence that had defined Zabuza Momochi since childhood simply vanished, replaced by a golden luminescence that pulsed once and then settled into steady radiance. A halo materialized behind his head. Faint gold. A ring of divine light hovering 2 inches from his skull, casting a soft glow on his dark hair. His skin went pale, luminous, like marble lit from within. Zabuza stood up. His posture was perfect, spine straight, shoulders level, chin raised. His hands hung at his sides with the relaxed readiness of a soldier at attention. He turned to face Naruto and bowed. A deep, graceful bow from the waist held for 3 full seconds. When he rose, his expression was one of absolute, utter, total devotion. There was no person behind those golden eyes. There was a purpose, a function, a tool that loved its wielder with every fiber of its being because it had been built to love nothing else. Tazuna vomited over the side of the bridge. Kakashi took 3 steps backward without deciding to. Sasuke couldn't look away. He wanted to. Something in him was screaming to look away, to turn, to run. But he couldn't, because part of him, the part that had been chasing power since the night his brother massacred his family, was fascinated. And that fascination horrified him more than anything else. Sakura's legs gave out. She sat down on the bridge surface, staring, mouth open, and a sound came out of her that was not quite a word and not quite a cry. It was the sound of someone watching something they would never be able to unsee. From the trees at the far end of the bridge, a figure dropped. Small, masked, Hunter 9 aesthetic, the porcelain mask, the dark hair, the graceful landing. Haku. He had watched everything. From the mist clearing to the blade shattering to the conversion. He had watched the man he loved, the man who had saved him, given him purpose, given him a reason to exist, get unmade in front of him. His hands were shaking. The senbon between his fingers rattled. Haku ripped off the mask. His face was beautiful and young and absolutely ravaged with grief. Tears ran freely down his cheeks, his chest heaved. "What have you done to him?" His voice came out as a strangled thing, high and breaking and furious. "What have you done?" Naruto turned to him, and the expression on his face, the genuine, heartfelt, aching compassion, was the cruelest thing Haku had ever seen. Because it was real. This boy pitied him. This boy who had just destroyed the only person Haku had was looking at him with the eyes of someone who believed, with their entire being, that they had done something kind. "I have freed him," Naruto said. His voice was so gentle it burned. He will never feel pain again. He will never suffer. He will never grow old or weak or broken. He extended one hand toward Haku, palm open, fingers relaxed. "Do not cry, child. You will be together forever now." Haku screamed. He launched forward. Senbon out. Ice release crystallizing around him in a storm of frozen needles and rage. Demonic mirroring ice crystals. The ice mirrors formed around Naruto in a dome. Haku's ultimate technique, the thing that made him dangerous even to experienced jonin, the speed and precision that turned a battle into an execution. He bounced between mirrors. 20 senbon flew from every angle. Neck, heart, spine, eyes, kill shots, all of them. Haku had never tried to kill anyone with his full power before. He was trying now. The senbon stopped in midair. Golden spheres, tiny, individual chronostasis fields, materialized around each projectile. 20 points of light frozen in space around Naruto's unmoving form. Haku appeared in a mirror directly above Naruto. He had a single senbon aimed at the crown of the boy's head. He dropped, all his speed, all his intent, everything he had. Naruto looked up. "You love him very much," he said. There was wonder in it. Real, genuine wonder, the way a scientist marvels at a beautiful anomaly. That love is what makes you worthy. He caught Haku's wrist, the ice mirrors shattered. Every one of them, 12 constructs of flawless Kekkei Genkai ice, cracked and fell at the same instant, as if Naruto's grip on Haku's wrist had been the only thing holding them together. Naruto placed his free hand on Haku's chest, over the heart that was hammering with grief and rage and love. Soul Magic Paladin. Haku's scream was different from Zabuza's. Where Zabuza's conversion had been the breaking of a wolf, Haku's was the quieting of a songbird. The scream started high and desperate and full of everything Haku was. The love, the devotion, the beauty of a boy who had been willing to die for the only person who ever needed him. And then it faded. It got quieter and quieter, until there was nothing left. Haku's eyes, dark and liquid and expressive even in fury, went gold. His skin paled. The halo formed, matching Zabuza's, the same faint golden ring. He straightened, his face smoothed into the same blank, devoted serenity. He turned, walked to Zabuza's side, stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder, the way they had always stood, both blank-eyed, both haloed, both perfectly, peacefully, eternally empty, together forever, exactly as promised. Naruto looked at them for a moment. Something flickered across his face, satisfaction, tenderness, and something that might have been love if love could exist without caring about the beloved's opinion. He turned back to his team. Kakashi was staring at him. Sasuke was staring at him. Sakura was staring at him. Tazuna was wiping vomit from his chin and staring at him. Naruto smiled, that warm, patient, compassionate smile. The smile of a man who has just done something wonderful and is waiting for the people around him to catch up to how wonderful it was. "The mission is complete," he said pleasantly. "The threat to the bridge builder has been resolved. Shall we continue?" Nobody spoke. Nobody had words. They completed the mission to Wave Country in silence. The bridge was built. Tazuna named it the Great Naruto Bridge, because what else do you do when the most terrifying thing you have ever witnessed asks nicely if they can escort you home? You name things after it and hope it stays happy. Zabuza and Haku walked 6 paces behind Naruto at all times. They did not eat. They did not sleep. They stood guard through the night with golden eyes reflecting nothing and saw nothing but the boy in white who owned every thought they would ever think again. Kakashi filed no report about what happened on the bridge. Some things were bigger than paperwork. Some things were too large to fit inside a mission report without the report becoming something else entirely. A warning, or a prophecy, or a confession of helplessness. He told himself he was being strategic, that he was waiting for more information, that he would report when he understood what he was dealing with. He was lying. He was afraid. Everyone who met Naruto Uzumaki's eyes and really looked, really saw what was behind them, was afraid. The Chunin exams. 3 months after Wave Country, Naruto entered the exam with his team. Sasuke brooded. Sakura was tense. Both of them had been different since the bridge. Jumpier, more alert, oscillating between fascination and revulsion when they looked at their blonde teammate. Naruto was serene. He moved through the written exam without touching his pencil for the first 30 minutes, then wrote every answer in perfect flowing script without a single correction. Ibiki Morino, the proctor, watched him from the front of the room and felt something in his stomach turn cold. The forest of death. Team 7 entered through gate 12. The proctor, Anko Mitarashi, student of Orochimaru, had felt something strange when she stamped their entrance papers. She looked at the blonde kid in white and her curse seal throbbed once, sharp and hot. She rubbed her neck and said nothing, The forest was a battlefield by design. Teams tearing into each other for scrolls, traps, ambushes. The survival of the most ruthless compressed into 5 days. Team 7 acquired their second scroll in 4 hours. Naruto walked through the forest, and 2 teams simply handed him their scrolls. He asked nicely. He smiled at them. Something in that smile made grown genin who had trained their entire lives for this moment decide, independently and simultaneously, that keeping a scroll was less important than keeping that boy happy. They made it to the tower's vicinity by day 2. And then the forest changed. The killing intent hit like a natural disaster, like the air itself had decided to become hostile. Trees bent away from its source. Insects went silent in a half-mile radius. Small animals dropped dead from the pressure alone. Hearts burst, nervous systems overloaded. Sasuke's knees buckled. Sakura collapsed. Naruto stopped walking. He turned toward the source and tilted his head. "Ah," he said, "a visitor." Orochimaru emerged from the canopy like a snake uncoiling. His appearance was wrong. A woman's body, a man's presence. The fundamental dissonance of a soul wearing the wrong skin with absolute comfort. His tongue extended, obscenely long, licking his lips as he assessed the scene. His yellow, slit-pupiled eyes scanned Team 7. They lingered on Sasuke, the Sharingan, the Uchiha bloodline, the body he had come to mark and eventually steal. Then they moved to Naruto, and stopped. Orochimaru had been alive for over 50 years. He had been a Sannin. He had killed a Hokage. He had dissected more Kekkei Genkai than most people knew existed. He had stared into the face of death itself and found it boring enough to dedicate his life to circumventing it. He looked at Naruto Uzumaki and felt something he had not felt since Hiruzen had nearly killed him during his defection. The white robes, the black star on the forehead, the posture, that absolute perfect stillness that comes from a person who has never in their life needed to prove anything to anyone. And the eyes, blue and warm and looking at Orochimaru with something that made the Sannin's legendary composure crack at the edges, pity. The child was looking at him with pity. My, Orochimaru said. His voice came out smooth and pleased, but there was a strain underneath that hadn't been there a moment ago. You have a very strange body, Naruto-kun. Let me study it. Naruto looked at him. The tilt of his head increased by 1 degree. You seek immortality through crude, physical mutation. A soft exhale left his lips, the ghost of a laugh barely audible, gone in a breath. How sad, how ugly, to spend a lifetime running from death by wearing other people's corpses. He shook his head gently. You could have been beautiful. You chose to be grotesque. Orochimaru's smile stayed fixed, but something behind it shifted. The entertained curiosity became something harder, more focused. Bold words for a genin, he said. His hand came up, forming the seal. Let me show you why they're misplaced. He bit his thumb, slammed his palm to the earth. Summoning jutsu. The forest floor exploded upward. Trees snapped like matchsticks. Earth displaced in a wave as something colossal forced itself into existence. Manda, the king of serpents. The boss summon of the snake contract. 300 feet of obsidian scales and fangs the size of grown men, coiling through the destroyed forest with the lazy menace of something that considered everything in sight to be food. Manda's head rose above the canopy. His tongue flickered. He looked down. Naruto looked up. Behind Naruto, the air split. Something vast and golden materialized in the sky above the tree line. A clock face, an ornate, impossibly detailed dial of pale gold light 50 meters across, hanging in the air like a second sun. Numerals carved in a language that predated human civilization ringed its edges. The hands moved, ticking, ticking, each tick reverberating through the forest like a heartbeat the size of a mountain. The temperature dropped. The light changed. Everything within a mile radius felt it. A pressure that was distinct from killing intent, distinct from chakra, distinct from anything the shinobi world had ever produced. It was the weight of time itself becoming aware of something so fundamental to the nature of reality, looking down at the assembled mortals and deciding whether their continued existence fit its schedule. Manda felt it. The king of serpents, an ancient, intelligent, vastly powerful creature, flinched. A full-body flinch that made his coils tighten involuntarily around the destroyed trees. Orochimaru felt it. He looked up at the golden clock face and his yellow eyes reflected it back. And for 1 second, just one, The mask of control he had maintained for 5 decades flickered. Chrono bind. Golden light descended from the clock face. It wrapped around Manda the way chains wrap around a prisoner. Tight, complete, inescapable. The serpent thrashed once, twice. Then his scales began to change. The obsidian shine dulled. The black became gray. The gray became the ashen white of ancient bone. Manda's flesh aged, years compressing into seconds, decades into heartbeats. His muscles atrophied, his eyes clouded. His titanic roar became a wheeze, and then became nothing at all. 3,000 years of serpentine life ran out in 3 seconds. Manda collapsed. The impact shook the forest. Dust rose. When it cleared, there was nothing left but bones. A colossal skeleton draped across the destroyed trees, already beginning to crumble. Then dust. Then nothing. Orochimaru stared at the space where his greatest summon had existed 3 seconds ago. His mouth was open. He had fought the third Hokage in his prime. He had battled Jiraiya at full power. He had survived Hanzo the Salamander's poison. He had seen things that would break lesser minds. He had never seen anything die that fast. He had never seen anything die that completely. The greatest serpent summon in existence. Reduced to dust by a golden light that a child summoned with 2 words, run. The thought came from somewhere below conscious decision-making, from the survival instinct that Orochimaru had spent 50 years ignoring because nothing in the world had ever been threatening enough to trigger it properly. Run now. He moved. Body flicker, full speed, every ounce of experience and power channeled into a single burst of velocity aimed at getting as far from this spot as physically possible in the shortest amount of time. Chronostasis. Golden light, Orochimaru froze, mid-air, mid-flicker, mid-escape, his body locked in a sphere of temporal suspension the size of a large room, every molecule arrested, every nerve impulse halted. His face was captured in an expression of pure, unfiltered panic, the first honest expression that face had worn in decades. Naruto walked to him. His footsteps were the only sound. The forest was silent, birds, insects, wind, all of it gone. As if the world itself was holding still to watch, he reached up. Orochimaru's frozen body hovered 4 feet off the ground. Naruto placed his hand against the Sanin's chest, over the heart that was currently suspended between beats. He closed his eyes. Soul magic, invasive and absolute, reached into Orochimaru of the Sanin like a hand reaching into a filing cabinet. Naruto searched through the vast, sprawling, centuries-deep repository of knowledge that Orochimaru had accumulated across a lifetime of obsessive research. Jutsu after jutsu flipped past his awareness like pages in a book. He found what he wanted. The Edo Tensei, the reanimation jutsu. A technique that pulled souls from the afterlife and bound them to imperfect, reconstructed bodies. Crude, wasteful, a hack job of resurrection that left the revived souls in agony and the bodies in constant degradation. But the principle, the core logic of reaching into death itself and pulling souls back, was sound. With modification, with the application of soul magic to purify the process and paladin conversion to replace the binding tags, the technique could become something else entirely. Something clean, something perfect. A way to build an army from the greatest warriors in history. Naruto cataloged the information, rewrote it in his mind, filed it away for later. Then he withdrew. The golden sphere dissipated. Orochimaru fell 4 feet to the forest floor and hit the ground in a heap, gasping, shaking, curled in on himself with both arms wrapped around his chest as if trying to hold his own soul in place. He had felt it. He had been frozen in time, but his awareness had remained active. And he had felt something reach inside him with the intimacy of a surgeon and the authority of a god and rifle through everything he was. Like it was a collection of interesting pamphlets, Orochimaru looked up at Naruto. Naruto looked down at him. The Sannin, the man who had terrorized the shinobi world for decades, who had filled mass graves on 4 continents, who had carved living people apart for science and slept soundly after, was trembling. His yellow eyes were wide and wet. His famous composure was gone. What was left underneath was a man who had just experienced what it felt like to be a specimen. "You are too rotten to be a paladin," Naruto said. His voice was soft, patient, full of genuine, sorrowful disappointment, the way a doctor looks at a patient who chose to refuse treatment. "Suffer in your own decay." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Orochimaru remained on the ground, shaking, staring at the back of a 12-year-old in white robes, trying to reconcile what had just happened with everything he understood about the world. He had come to this forest to mark Sasuke Uchiha with the cursed seal, to begin the slow process of corrupting and claiming the Sharingan for his own use. He had just been dismissed, like an insect, like an amusing, briefly interesting insect that wasn't worth stepping on. Orochimaru stayed on that forest floor for 7 minutes before he could make his legs work again. When he finally stood and body flickered away, he left the Chunin exams entirely. He abandoned his Sound Village's invasion preparations. He told Kabuto to pack. "We're leaving," he said. His voice was flat, dead. "Orochimaru-sama? The invasion. The plan. There is nothing here worth taking." Orochimaru's eyes were distant, lost. "I have spent my life seeking immortality because I believed death was the greatest threat to my existence." He laughed, a hollow sound, empty of his usual pleasure. "I was wrong." They were gone from Fire Country within the hour. Back in the forest, Naruto returned to his team. Sasuke was sitting against a tree, Sharingan active, staring at Naruto like a man watching a mushroom cloud. Sakura was standing beside him, pale as a sheet, both hands gripping Sasuke's arm. "The threat has passed," Naruto announced pleasantly. He brushed a leaf off his white robe. "Shall we continue to the tower?" "What?" Sasuke's voice came out hoarse. He cleared his throat. "Try it again." "What was that thing? The clock? The light?" "That summon turned to." "Dust," Naruto finished. He smiled. "Yes, time is a beautiful instrument. It plays such a definitive note." He began walking toward the tower. After 3 steps, Sasuke and Sakura followed, because what else could they do? Where else could they go? They reached the tower. They passed the preliminary fights. Naruto did not participate in the one-on-one preliminaries. He simply withdrew, citing disinterest, and the proctor accepted it, because something about arguing with that boy felt like arguing with gravity. The month between preliminaries and finals passed. Naruto spent it in meditation. He sat on the Hokage monument, on the 4th stone head, because the irony pleased him, and he felt the village beneath him. Thousands of souls, thousands of stories of grief and love and ambition and fear, all playing out in the patterns that humanity always played out. War building in the shadows. The Sand and Sound villages assembling an invasion force. Anbu shuffling their deployments. The Hokage sensing something coming and preparing too little too late. "They cannot help it," Naruto murmured to the wind. "They are what they are. Violent and afraid and desperately searching for peace they will never find through violence and fear." He opened his eyes. The village spread below him like a tapestry of suffering, wearing bright colors and brave faces. "But I can help them. I will help them all." The invasion began at midday. The signal was the Genjutsu, a mass-cast illusion sweeping through the stadium crowds during the Chunin exam finals, putting civilians to sleep in their seats. Sand and Sound shinobi shed their disguises, and the killing started. Outside the village walls, the trump card emerged. Gaara of the Sand. The one-tailed Jinchuriki, unstable, bloodthirsty, barely contained on the best of days, was released like a weapon aimed at Konoha's heart. His teammates Temari and Kankuro tried to guide him away from populated areas and failed within 30 seconds. Gaara wasn't listening. Gaara hadn't been listening to anyone since the night his uncle tried to kill him. Sand erupted from his gourd in a tidal wave. It crushed a guard tower. It swept through a residential block. Civilians screamed and ran, and some of them didn't run fast enough. The partial transformation came next. Shukaku's arm erupting from Gaara's shoulder, massive and sand-colored and ending in claws the size of houses. He swung. A building split in half. He fired a compressed air bullet that punched a crater in the main road 50 meters wide. Konoha shinobi responded. Chunin, Jonin, Anbu, throwing techniques at a Jinchuriki in partial transformation and watching them splash against the sand armor like water against a boulder. Gaara laughed. The sound was high and wrong, and full of the kind of joy that only comes from people who have been in pain so long that causing pain feels like relief. Then he transformed fully. The one tail erupted from Gaara's body in full manifestation, a tanuki the size of a mountain, sand and wind and ancient malice given form. Shukaku howled. The sound wave flattened trees at the village perimeter. Shinobi who were too close simply stopped existing, pulped by sound pressure alone. The beast rampaged. Sand crushed, wind tore, buildings fell. For 3 minutes, the village of Konoha experienced what it was like to face a force of nature that hated them. And then the force of nature looked up, because something was descending from the sky. Naruto floated above the chaos on a current of golden light, time itself serving as his transportation, the air around him warped and luminous with Astaroth's power. His white robes caught the wind of Shukaku's devastation and rippled gently, unstained by the smoke and fire below. His hands were clasped in front of him. His expression was the one he always wore, warm, patient, sorrowful, and deeply, profoundly certain. He looked down at the burning village. He looked at the dead in the streets. He looked at the shinobi fighting and dying in futile defense. "Humans are so fragile," he said, his voice carrying over the destruction as if the world itself was amplifying it. "They tear each other apart over petty emotions, and then they weep as if they didn't choose this. Every single time." Shukaku noticed him, the one-tail's yellow diamond eyes fixed on the floating speck of white and gold. The beast's mouth opened, the wind chakra building, compressing, preparing a wind bullet at full beast scale. The kind of attack that wouldn't just kill a person, it would erase the space they had occupied. The wind bullet fired, a compressed missile of air the size of a large building, moving at twice the speed of sound, aimed directly at Naruto. Naruto raised one hand, palm open. Time reversal. The wind bullet stopped, hung in midair, the compressed air visibly distorting the light around it. Then it rewound. The compression reversed. The air molecules scattered back to their pre-gathered state. The attack unhappened, and then continued unhappening. The reversal pushing backward along the technique's trajectory, reversing the compression in Shukaku's own mouth, forcing the beast's jaw shut on the energy of its own attack. Shukaku staggered. The one tail actually staggered, a mountain of sand lurching backward a step from the force of its own reverse technique. Every shinobi in the vicinity saw it. The Anbu on the rooftops, the Chunin on the ground, the Sand siblings, Tamari and Kankuro, standing atop a building 2 blocks away with their mouths open. A 12-year-old had just reversed a tailed beast's attack with a raised hand. Naruto descended. He landed on Shukaku's head, his bare feet touching the sand surface of the beast's skull as gently as if he were stepping onto a pillow. The sand should have consumed him. Shukaku's automatic defense should have swallowed any living thing that touched its surface. The sand parted around Naruto's feet like water around a stone. Gaara was in there, somewhere inside the beast's skull, his real body, cocooned in sand, maintaining the technique through a forced sleep. The feigning sleep technique, the trade that every one-tailed Jinchuriki made. Let the beast take over. Let your consciousness fade. Become the battery that powers the destruction. Naruto crouched. He placed both palms flat on the sand surface of Shukaku's head, his eyes closed. He reached down. Through the sand, through the chakra, through the layers of one-tailed beast and ancient sealing technique and the barriers that kept Jinchuriki and Biju functioning as a unit. He reached until he found it. Gaara's soul. It was small, compressed, wrapped in layers of self-hatred and blood-soaked memory that formed a shell so thick it had become the only structure the boy knew. Inside that shell, the actual person, a child who wanted to be loved, who had been told by the only person who ever pretended to love him that he was a monster, who had killed because killing was the only way the world responded to him, was curled up and screaming, and had been screaming since he was 6 years old. Naruto's expression, there atop the raging beast with a village burning below him, softened into something that hurt to look at. "You poor child," he whispered. "You have been in so much pain, and no one ever helped you. They used you or feared you or tried to kill you, and you learned that pain was all there was." His palms glowed. "I will save you from this madness. Soul magic paladin." The white gold light erupted downward. It pierced through Shukaku's sand body like sunlight through clouds. Threads of luminous power drilling toward the center, finding Gaara's cocooned form, wrapping around the boy's body and beginning the process. Shukaku felt it. The one tail roared, a sound of fury and also of something that might have been fear if ancient beasts were capable of such things. It thrashed. Its tail swept through a commercial district. Its claws tore into the earth. It tried to reject what was happening inside its own form. Naruto held on. His palms stayed flat. His eyes stayed closed. His expression stayed peaceful. The robes caught the wind of Shukaku's thrashing and billowed behind him like the vestments of a saint performing a miracle in the middle of a hurricane. The light intensified. Inside the beast, Gaara's soul was being transformed. The hatred was stripped first, peeled away like dead skin, dissolved in the white gold radiance. Then the loneliness, then the madness, then the desperate, aching need for validation that had driven every murder Gaara had ever committed. Layer after layer of damage, removed with the care and thoroughness of an archaeologist uncovering the original structure beneath centuries of ruin. What was left was the core, the child, the innocent thing that had existed before the village made him into a weapon. Naruto rebuilt him from that core. Paladin architecture, the divine framework of absolute loyalty, absolute devotion, absolute peace, was laid over the foundation of what Gaara had been before the world broke him. The result was something that looked like healing. That felt like mercy. That was, in every way that mattered, a total death followed by a total rebirth into servitude. Shukaku's thrashing slowed. The sand composing the One-Tail's body began to shift color, brown gold becoming white, the same luminous pallor that had taken Zabuza and Haku. The beast's form held for another moment, 2 moments, and then it started to compress, to shrink, to fold inward. Shukaku was being converted alongside its host, every shinobi watching, and by now there were dozens of them, gathered on rooftops and in the streets, battles abandoned, eyes raised to the impossible spectacle atop the shrinking beast, saw the same thing. A boy in white robes, standing on the head of a tailed beast as it compressed from mountain to hill to house's size to nothing, riding it down like a man standing on a deflating balloon. When it was over, Naruto stood on the ground. His feet were on broken pavement. Around him, the sand had settled, thin, inert, covering the street like beach sand. In front of him, a boy knelt. Gaara, 13 years old, red hair, pale skin, the kanji for love still carved into his forehead. His eyes were open. They were gold. The halo shimmered behind his head, that faint, beautiful ring of light. His expression was peaceful. For the first time in his life, genuinely peaceful. The kind of peace that comes from having every burden removed, including the burden of choice. Gaara bowed his head. "Rise," Naruto said softly. Gaara rose. He stood at Naruto's right shoulder, blank-eyed, luminous, the sand at his feet stirring gently in response to his presence. His power intact, his will gone. The reactions came in waves. On a rooftop 60 meters away, Tamari dropped to her knees. Her fan clattered to the ground beside her. She was staring at her brother, her terrifying, uncontrollable, blood-soaked brother, standing calmly beside a boy in white with the expression of a temple statue. Tears streamed down her face, and she couldn't have said whether they were relief or horror or both. Kankuro grabbed the rooftop edge to keep himself standing. His puppet, Crow, hung slack on its strings. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. An Ambu captain on a water tower 3 blocks east ripped off his mask, a breach of protocol so severe it could end a career, because he needed to see this with his own eyes. Needed the mask's restricted field of vision to stop interfering with his comprehension of what had just happened. On the Hokage tower, the 3rd Kage, currently locked in barrier combat with Orochimaru's Edo Tensei summons, and the former student himself, felt the One-Tail's chakra vanish. Not suppress, not contain. Vanish, like it had never existed. Like reality itself had decided the One-Tail was no longer something that was happening. Sarutobi faltered. In the barrier, surrounded by resurrected Hokages being puppeted by Orochimaru's technique, the old man looked toward where the One-Tail had been and felt something in his chest go cold. The invasion fell apart after that. Without the One-Tail as their centerpiece weapon, without Orochimaru to rally them, the snake Sannin having fled the continent hours earlier, the sand and sound forces crumbled. The remaining enemy shinobi who didn't surrender were routed within the hour. Konoha survived. But the mood in the aftermath was wrong. There was victory, yes. Relief, yes. But underneath it, in the whispered conversations between Ambu operatives and the closed-door meetings of the Jonin command, there was a new kind of fear. A 12-year-old in white robes had pacified a tailed beast with his bare hands. Nobody knew what to do with that information. Nobody could agree on whether what they had witnessed was a miracle or a warning sign. Naruto returned to his apartment that evening with Gaara walking 3 paces behind him. He made tea. He poured 2 cups, one for himself, one that sat untouched in front of Gaara because paladins did not need to eat or drink. 4, he said, looking out his window at the smoking village below. Kurama, Zabuza, Haku, Gaara, a modest beginning. He took a sip. But we have time. The weeks after the invasion were consumed with reconstruction. Konoha rebuilt itself the way it always did, with the stubbornness of people who had been knocked down before and refused to stay there. The 3rd Hokage had survived, barely, and only because Orochimaru had fled before completing whatever ritual he'd been planning, but he was weakened. The village council pressed for a 5th Hokage. Names were floated. Jiraiya of the Sannin refused. Tsunade of the Sannin was located and recalled. Life went on. Team 7 continued missions. Kakashi kept his distance from Naruto. 3 meters minimum at all times. Never alone in a room with him. Never making direct eye contact for more than 2 seconds. It was the behavior of a man who had looked at something he couldn't fight and decided the only survivable strategy was avoidance. Sasuke grew worse. The dark circles under his eyes deepened. His training intensity doubled, tripled, pushed past the point of physical safety into something that looked like desperation. He trained until his hands bled and then kept going. He sparred with anyone who would face him and brutalized them with a ferocity that his instructors flagged as concerning. He was chasing something, and he was losing the race because he could feel it. Every time Naruto looked at him, that warm, patient, knowing gaze. Like Naruto had already decided what Sasuke's future was and was simply being polite by letting him experience the illusion of free will for a little while longer. Sasuke Uchiha had spent his entire life being controlled by his clan's expectations, by his brother's massacre, by his own thirst for revenge that consumed every waking thought and most of his dreams. He knew what it felt like to have your path decided for you by someone else's actions. This was worse. This was someone who could decide his future by wanting it hard enough. The breaking point came at night. Sasuke was in his apartment, alone, sweating from a training session that had lasted 7 hours, staring at the ceiling. The Sound Four had come to him that afternoon. Orochimaru's messengers offering power. The kind of power that could match a Hokage, the kind of power that lived in the Cursed Seal Mark II and beyond. Orochimaru, the man who had fled from Naruto. Sasuke almost laughed. Almost. The Snake Sannin was running scared from the same kid Sasuke was supposed to be teammates with. Following Orochimaru felt like running from one puppet master to another. But at least Orochimaru was human. At least Orochimaru was comprehensible. Naruto was something Sasuke had no category for. Following Orochimaru meant becoming a vessel for the Sannin's immortality jutsu, a terrible fate. But staying near Naruto meant, what? Becoming one of those things. Those golden-eyed, halo-wearing empty shells that followed Naruto like shadows. He thought of Zabuza's blank face, Haku's vacant eyes. Gaara, the most terrifying person Sasuke had ever encountered, standing silently at Naruto's shoulder like a particularly well-trained dog. Their skills preserved, their power intact, their selves gone. Sasuke packed a bag. He put on his sandals. He went to the village gate at midnight. The Sound Four were waiting. They grinned. They offered the barrel for the Cursed Seal advancement. Sasuke got in, they ran. Konoha scrambled. Sasuke's absence was noted by morning. A retrieval team was assembled. Shikamaru, Neji, Choji, Kiba, Lee. Strong Genin, the best available on short notice. They set out. They would not make it in time because Naruto was already gone. He had left the village 3 hours before the retrieval team was even assembled. He had felt Sasuke's soul moving away from Konoha in the middle of the night, that desperate, panicked, grief-stricken signature, and he had risen from his bed and dressed in white and walked through the village gates while the guards slept. He walked. He did not run. There was no need to hurry. He knew where Sasuke was going. He knew every possible path between Konoha and the Valley of the End. He had seen it, felt it in the currents of time that he could sense the way other people sense weather. Sasuke would arrive at the valley. Sasuke would think he was free, and Naruto would be waiting. The Valley of the End, dawn. 2 colossal statues flanked the waterfall. Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, founders of Konoha, facing each other across the cascade in permanent opposition. The statues were ancient and weathered and heavy with symbolism that Naruto found quaint. Two men who had tried to build peace through strength and failed so spectacularly that the world was still dealing with the fallout generations later. Naruto stood on the water at the base of the waterfall. His white robes lay flat against the surface tension, untouched by the spray, unmoving in the wind. His hands were clasped in front of him. The black star on his forehead caught the first light of dawn and seemed to deepen. He waited. Sasuke arrived 18 minutes later. He came through the tree line at full sprint, the Sound 4's cursed seal enhancement already active, the black marks crawling across his skin, his chakra wild and unstable and burning. He burst from the forest edge and landed on the water at the far end of the valley, 40 meters from Naruto. He saw the white robes and his entire body locked. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. The waterfall roared between them. The morning light was gold and soft. The two statues looked down at them like judges. And between them, on the water's surface, the last remaining free member of Team 7 stared at the boy who had unmade everyone he'd ever fought, and Naruto smiled. That smile, warm, patient, certain, the smile of someone welcoming a friend home from a journey that was always going to end here. "Sasuke," Naruto said. His voice carried over the waterfall like a song, like a prayer. "My dear friend, where are you going?" Sasuke's breath came in ragged bursts. His Sharingan spun, 3 tomoe in each eye, fully matured, burning with the red of the bloodline that defined his entire existence. His hands were shaking, his legs were burning from running all night. But his voice, when it came out, was strong, because it was the last strong thing he had. "Stay away from me." Naruto tilted his head. "You are something else." Sasuke's voice broke on the second word, but he pushed through it. "You are something that should not exist. And I refuse. I refuse to be part of whatever you're building." Naruto's smile did not waver. His eyes did not lose their warmth. He looked at Sasuke, the way one looks at a frightened animal that doesn't understand the cage door has already closed. "Sasuke, you have been running since you were 7 years old, from your brother, from your grief, from the weakness you despise in yourself, and now you run from me." His voice was gentle, musical, wrong. "But there is nowhere you can go that I cannot follow. There is nothing you can become that I cannot improve. Shut up. I am offering you freedom from suffering, Sasuke. Real freedom, the permanent kind. Why do you fight it? Because I would rather die screaming than live as one of your puppets." Naruto's expression shifted, just slightly. A millimeter of movement in the muscles around his eyes, something that might have been admiration or amusement. "Brave," he said, "but ultimately irrelevant." Sasuke activated Cursed Seal Stage 2. The transformation was violent, his skin going gray-blue, the cross-shaped mark on his nose spreading, his hair lengthening and going pale. Webbed, claw-like wings erupted from his back, tearing through his shirt in sprays of blood, unfolding behind him like the wings of something pulled from hell. His chakra tripled, his speed tripled. The power of Orochimaru's gift coursed through him, and for the first time since the night his brother killed his family, Sasuke felt something that approximated hope. He could win this. He had to win this. He had to, because the alternative was Black Chidori. The lightning technique screamed to life in his palm. Not the blue of normal Chidori, but pitch black, corrupted and enhanced by the cursed seal, hungry and violent, and carrying enough voltage to pierce through 3 feet of reinforced steel. Sasuke launched. His wings beat once, propelling him across the 40 meters in under a second. The Black Chidori trailed lightning in his wake. His Sharingan locked onto Naruto's chest. The center mass, the kill shot, the point where this ended. He covered the distance, 10 meters, 5, 1. He thrust the Chidori forward and hit nothing. Naruto was not there. He was 2 inches to the left. Standing in the exact same position, hands still clasped, expression still serene. He had moved, but not with speed. Sasuke's Sharingan had tracked the movement, and what it showed him made his stomach drop. Naruto had adjusted the time around his own body. He had stepped a fraction of a second into the future. Let the Chidori pass through the space where his present moment self had been, and then return to normal time 1 step to the side. He had not dodged. He had made the attack irrelevant by being in a different moment. Sasuke spun. lashed out with a spinning kick augmented by the cursed seal's enhanced strength. Naruto leaned back an inch. The kick passed over his face close enough to disturb his blonde hair. Palm strike. 3 hits to the ribs. They came so fast Sasuke's Sharingan only registered them as blurs of motion. 1, 2, 3, each one accompanied by a pulse of something impossibly heavy. Gravity. Each palm strike landed with the force of something far beyond physical strength. The weight of amplified gravitation compressed into the point of impact. Sasuke's ribs cracked. Multiple fractures. He felt them go, felt the grinding shift of bone inside his chest. His breath left him in a forced wheeze. His knees hit the water surface. The cursed seal wings went rigid with pain. Naruto's hand closed around the base of Sasuke's left wing. White gold light flared. Soul purification. The wing dissolved. The corrupted chakra construct, Orochimaru's gift, the cursed seal's physical manifestation, came apart like smoke and wind. The dark energy bled away, purified and dispersed into nothing by a power that treated evil chakra like a minor infection. Sasuke screamed. The second wing went the same way. Naruto's other hand closing around it, the light flaring, the construct disappearing. The cursed seal marks retreated across Sasuke's skin, running from the purifying light like ink washed by rain, until they compressed back down to the single mark on his neck. And then that mark went out too. Sasuke hit the water face first. The cursed seal, the power he had bet his escape on, was gone. Purified from his system in under 10 seconds, he was back to baseline, back to the strong but mortal genin he had been before the Sound 4 found him. He was bleeding from 6 points, 3 fractured ribs, no cursed seal, no wings, no enhanced strength. He could not stand. The water around his face was pink with blood. He tried to push himself up. His arms shook. He collapsed. Tried again. Collapsed again. A hand touched the back of his head. Gentle, warm. Naruto crouched over him. He turned Sasuke's face upward with one hand, cradling his jaw the way a parent holds a child's face. His thumb wiped blood from Sasuke's cheek. The pity in his expression was immense and real. That was always the worst part. It was always real. "You still cling to your flawed, mortal free will," Naruto said softly. His eyes moved across Sasuke's face like he was memorizing something precious, something he was about to change forever. "You believe that suffering is what makes you strong, that pain is what makes you yourself, that if you lost those things, you would cease to exist." Sasuke's Sharingan stared up at him. 3 tomoe spinning, reading everything, understanding nothing. "You're wrong," Naruto whispered. "You will still exist. You will simply be better." "Don't." One word, Sasuke's voice, broken and bloody and barely above a breath. "Don't do this. I must." Naruto's voice was full of love, terrible, complete, all-consuming love. "Because I love you too much to let you suffer." His hand began to glow. Soul magic. The light entered Sasuke through Naruto's palm on his cheek. It was warm. That was the cruelest trick of all. It felt warm. It felt like sunlight, like safety, like the embrace of a mother Sasuke could barely remember. It spread through him like heat through cold metal, reaching into every corner of his being. And then it began to rewrite. Sasuke fought. God, he fought. Every ounce of stubbornness that had kept him alive through the massacre, he threw it against the light. Every shred of hatred for Itachi that had been his reason to wake up every morning for 5 years, he weaponized it, turned it into a wall, a fortress of identity built on rage and loss and the absolute refusal to be owned by anyone ever again. The light went through it, through all of it. The walls fell, the fortress crumbled. The hatred, the thing that had been Sasuke's spine for 5 years, was reached, assessed, and unmade. He felt it go. He felt the anger leave him, and it was like feeling gravity release, like floating, like the ground disappearing beneath his feet and there being nothing below but warm, golden, empty space. His memories of the massacre remained. His memory of Itachi's Sharingan eyes in the darkness remained. His memory of his mother and father on the floor remained. But the emotion attached to them was gone. The drive, the purpose, the self that those memories had built. Sasuke Uchiha, the avenger, the rival, the last loyal son of a dead clan, felt his own consciousness thin, felt his thoughts simplify, felt the complex churning storm of his inner life settle into a smooth flat lake of gold. His last thought, his last real, fully his own thought, was, "I was never going to escape, was I?" And then there was peace. His Sharingan eyes stopped spinning. The three Tomoe faded. The red drained to gold, luminous, steady, empty. His face relaxed. Every line of tension, every crease of worry, every shadow of sleepless rage-filled nights smoothed away. His skin went pale, luminous. The halo formed, a ring of divine golden light hovering behind his dark hair, casting a soft glow on the water's surface. Beautiful, serene, complete. Sasuke stood. His posture was perfect. His hands fell to his sides. His head turned to Naruto, to the boy who now occupied the entirety of his purpose, his devotion, his existence, and he bowed, deep, graceful. The bow of a knight to his king, Naruto looked down at him, and something in Naruto's expression, something human, something that might have been Naruto Uzumaki rather than Lucius Zogratis, flickered for just a moment. A shadow of something that knew what it had just done to someone who had been precious. It passed. "Rise, my paladin." Sasuke rose. He stood at Naruto's left shoulder. His eyes looked forward. His expression was a mirror of Gaara's, of Zabuza's, of Haku's. Devotion without self. Service without will. Peace without personhood. Naruto turned from his newest paladin and looked at the Valley of the End. The two great statues, Hashirama and Madara, stared at each other across the waterfall the way they had for 100 years. Two men who had tried to solve humanity's violence with greater violence. Two men who had built a system on bloodshed and called it civilization. Naruto looked at them for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Then he spoke. "The age of shinobi is over." He turned away from the statues. He began to walk upstream, away from Konoha, away from the village that had birthed him and hated him and been the backdrop for his awakening. Each step was measured. Each step was certain. Each step carried the weight of inevitability. Sasuke walked at his left shoulder, halos gleaming in the morning light, the Sharingan eyes that had been bred for war now glowing gold with divine compliance. His steps matched Naruto's perfectly, the synchronization of a being who no longer possessed the concept of independent rhythm. Behind them, somewhere far back along the road, the retrieval team was still running, still racing to save Sasuke. They would arrive at the valley in 4 hours and find nothing there but blood on the water and cracks in the riverbed and the fading glow of something they would never understand. Shikamaru would look at the sight and say nothing for a very long time. Neji would activate his Byakugan and see the residual energy, golden, warm, wrong in a way that made his bloodline limit flinch away. And he would deactivate his eyes and never speak about what they showed him. Kiba's dog would whimper, just a continuous low, terrified whimper that wouldn't stop for 3 days after they returned to Konoha. They would report, "Sasuke Uchiha is gone. Naruto Uzumaki is gone." They left together. Nobody would send a pursuit team, because nobody who had ever felt Naruto Uzumaki's presence up close was willing to suggest they go looking for him. But that was hours in the future. In the present, in the golden light of dawn over the Valley of the End, Naruto walked away from the world he had been born into. His white robes caught the sunlight. The star on his forehead gleamed. Behind him, a paladin walked in perfect step. Ahead of him, a world that did not yet know what was coming. He had Kurama, a tailed beast made holy. He had Zabuza and Haku, masters of blade and ice, bound to his will. He had Gaara, a Jinchuriki converted, the One-Tail's power singing in divine frequency at his command. He had Sasuke, the Sharingan, the last Uchiha, the bloodline that had once been the pride of Konoha's military. He had the Edo Tensei's principles, rewritten and perfected in his mind, waiting to be deployed. He had time, all of it. He had a plan that ended with every soul on this earth remade in divine perfection. Every war ended, every grave the last one ever dug. A plan that concluded with a world of immortal paladins, beautiful, peaceful, obedient, free from the disease of choice. And one God standing at the center of that perfect silence, smiling warmly at the paradise he had built from the screaming raw materials of a broken species. He would start small. He would collect. He would convert. He would grow his army one soul at a time, choosing the strongest, the most skilled, the most valuable, until the force he commanded was beyond anything the 5 great nations could respond to. And then he would save them all, every last one, whether they wanted it or not. Naruto paused at the tree line. He looked back one last time over his shoulder at the valley, at the waterfall, at the statues, at the world he was leaving behind. The era of the true perfect humanity begins now. He walked into the trees. The sunlight followed him, golden and warm and utterly, completely wrong. In Konoha, Kakashi sat in his apartment and stared at the wall. He had felt it. An hour ago, something in his chest, in the place where Naruto had touched him during the bell test, had gone cold, like a candle being snuffed, like a promise being broken. He reached for the drawer, the one with the report, the one he'd never sent. He opened it, read the single paragraph he'd written months ago. Threat level unknown. Kakashi put the paper down. He put his face in his hands. He had known, from the first moment, from the golden light in the frozen arm and those terrible, warm, compassionate eyes, he had known what Naruto was. What Naruto was becoming. What Naruto would do when there was nothing left to pretend for. And he had been too afraid to act. He stayed like that for a long time. The leaves crunched under his bare feet like something dying politely. East of the Valley of the End, the forest floor was thick with autumn rot, brown and orange, and the gray of seasons gone without tending. Mist hung between the trunks in ribbons that moved like living things retreating from whatever was walking through them. The waterfall's roar faded behind them step by step, replaced by the dense hush of old-growth timber that had never been logged because nobody came here. Nobody had reason to. Two sets of footsteps, one unhurried, one perfectly synchronized, placed at the exact interval, the exact cadence, without variation or hesitation or independent thought. Naruto walked with his hands clasped behind his back. His white robes brushed the leaf litter and came away clean. The star on his forehead caught the first gray light filtering through the canopy and seemed to drink it. His breathing was even. His expression was the same expression he always wore, warm, present, deeply engaged with the beauty of the world around him, in the way a sculptor engages with a block of stone he is about to reshape. Sasuke walked at his left shoulder. His feet moved through the same leaves. His golden eyes looked forward without seeing anything that did not concern his master's trajectory. The halo behind his head cast a faint amber glow on the bark of trees they passed, a mobile halo of light tracking through the forest like a lantern being carried by something that used to be human. A bird called somewhere in the canopy. Another answered. The forest was alive around them, in the way forests are alive at dawn, teeming, stirring, unaware that something fundamental about the world had shifted 6 hours ago at the base of a waterfall between two statues. Naruto stopped. He turned his head, looked at the boy walking at his shoulder, the straight posture, the level chin, the black hair falling over golden eyes that reflected everything and considered nothing. Sasuke's face in the early light was handsome and young and perfectly, absolutely vacant in the way a sculpture is vacant. The shape remained. The artist had finished. What was left was a thing to be observed rather than spoken to. Sasuke, Naruto said. Sasuke stopped. His head turned. His eyes found Naruto's face with the immediate total attention of something built to respond. Yes, my lord. 3 words. Correct. Courteous. Hollow the way a bell is hollow. The shape exists to produce a sound, and the sound exists to serve a function. And underneath both, there is only the emptiness that allows the vibration. Naruto studied him. His blue eyes moved across that face. The face he had watched scowl and rage and burn with ambition for months at the academy. The face that had twisted with fury during the bell test. The face that had been streaming tears the night his brother's shadow first fell across his family's compound. All of those expressions were possible. The muscles remained. The neural pathways remained. What was gone was the person who chose which expression to wear. You would have been magnificent, he said. He was speaking to a ghost, to the Sasuke that had existed 6 hours ago, the one who had screamed don't and meant it with everything he had left, the one who ran because running was the last free act available to him. That Sasuke was gone the way a flame is gone when you close the lantern. The structure remains, the fuel remains, the capacity for fire remains. Just the spark is missing. Naruto's expression flickered, one fraction of a second, where something almost like grief crossed those serene features. Then it passed, replaced by the warmth that had defined him since the memories settled into his skull in a rain-soaked alley 4 years ago. He kept walking. The forest opened ahead of them in stages. Thinner undergrowth, wider spacing between trunks, the gradual transition from old growth to borderland, where two nations met and neither maintained the trees. Naruto moved through it with the assurance of a man who could feel the entire continent spread beneath his awareness like a map drawn in living ink. Soul detection, the passive extension of his consciousness that registered every human soul within hundreds of miles as a unique frequency of grief and want and purpose. Behind him, to the south and west, Konoha buzzed. He could feel it. Thousands of souls stirring awake into a morning that would bring them news their minds were equipped to receive. The Hokage's soul, weakened from the invasion, heavy with the particular exhaustion of old men who have spent their authority and know it. Sakura's soul, bright, frightened, alone in her apartment, wondering where her teammates went. Iruka's soul at the academy, already preparing lessons for students who would graduate into a world that would be unrecognizable within the year. The retrieval team moving east, running hard, burning with mission urgency. Shikamaru's soul the sharpest, already calculating, already suspecting that whatever they found at the valley would answer questions they had been afraid to ask. Further, scattered across the continent like embers from different fires, the Akatsuki. He could feel them the way you feel storm pressure in your sinuses before rain falls. Kasame's soul burned like a banked furnace in the land of water, vast and cheerful and violent. Itachi's soul, and here Naruto lingered, because Itachi's was the most complex thing he had ever read at distance. Burned like a candle in a sealed room, using itself up for a purpose the world would never thank him for. Pain was the Western Amegakure, that strange cluster of 6 bodies wrapped around one fragile, burning consciousness that reminded Naruto of looking in a mirror and finding the reflection wearing different clothes. And Killer Bee, far to the northeast, the 8 tails wrapped around his host in a partnership so genuine it made Kurama's former rage look like a tantrum. A soul that rapped and fought and loved its tenant and was loved in return. All of them. Every single one. Threads on a tapestry he was weaving, whether they knew it or not. Naruto opened his eyes. He had closed them for a single step, no more, and looked ahead at the forest thinning into open country. Patience, he said to himself. The words settled into the air between the trees like a stone settling into deep water. He had said it to himself before. He had said it across lifetimes, in golden throne rooms, in the spaces between centuries of planning, in the moments when the scale of what he intended pressed against the limits of even his tolerance for delay. Everything in its order. By midday, they reached the border. A guard station straddled the road between the land of fire and the land of rivers. Wooden, 2-story, the kind of structure that nations build at their edges and then forget about when the political landscape shifts. This one had been abandoned for 2 years. The records inside were rotting in their filing cabinets. The roof leaked in 3 places. The walls were solid. Naruto stood in the center of the main room and felt the space around him. His paladins would come. Zabuza and Haku from wherever they had been staged during his time at the valley. Gaara from the waypoint east of the main road. They would arrive because he called them through the connection that soul magic maintained across any distance. They would come the way blood flows toward a wound, drawn by the purpose their existence now served. By evening, they were assembled. Zabuza stood in the western doorway, 7 feet of blank-eyed killing potential. His bandages gone since the conversion, his scarred face visible and smoothed into that expression of total devotion that made him look 20 years younger. He held a blade, crystallized from a frozen moment of time by Naruto's power, an edge that existed between seconds and cut through everything that occupied the present. He held it with the muscle memory of a man who had been killing since childhood, and his grip was perfect, and his eyes saw nothing except the boy he served. Haku stood at Zabuza's side, always at his side. The ice Keke Genkai hummed in the air around him as a perpetual chill, snowflakes forming and dissolving in the space near his shoulders, beautiful and purposeless, the way decorations on a tomb are beautiful and purposeless. His face was the same face that had looked at Zabuza with desperate love on a bridge in Wave Country. The features hadn't changed. What lived behind them had been replaced with something that wore love's shape without love's substance. Gaara sat in the center of the courtyard. His golden sand drifted around him in patterns that resembled meditation. Slow loops, figure eights, the geometries of a power that no longer needed emotion to direct it. The One-Tail's energy pulsed through every grain, and the grains moved in perfect coordination because the Jinchuriki directing them no longer contained the chaos that had once made his control unpredictable. A sensor network extended from the sand in every direction. Vibrations, pressure changes, the weight of approaching souls. He was a fortress and a radar station in a single body. Sasuke stood at the door. His Sharingan was inactive, the golden eyes sufficient for guard duty against anything short of a Kage. His hands rested at his sides. He breathed evenly. He looked at nothing. Naruto climbed to the roof. He sat cross-legged on the tiles with the stars coming alive above him in their thousands, and the villages of the borderland glowing distantly to the south, and the wind carrying the smells of pine and river clay and the first hint of autumn cold. He closed his eyes and began to plan. The Edo Tensei, rewritten in his mind, purified through Soul Magic's framework. The ability to reach into the afterlife and draw out warriors would be useful eventually, but the priorities were simpler now. The living targets first, the ones whose power was too great to leave unconverted in a world he intended to transform. Kasame and Itachi moved as a pair. Taking them together was efficient. Hidan and Kakuzu were loud and would come to him. He would let them. Pain required an approach, a walk to Omegakure, a statement that announced what was happening and that resisting it was a formality the doomed observed before bowing. Killer Bee would require travel. The Kage would require scale. He breathed in. He breathed out. The stars wheeled above him and the world slept and did not know that the architecture of its future was being finalized on a rooftop in a forgotten border station by a 12-year-old in white who had already decided the ending. 3 days passed. Naruto remained. His paladins maintained the perimeter in shifts that he set for the aesthetics of normalcy rather than necessity. None of them needed rest. None of them needed sleep. None of them experienced fatigue in a form that would reduce their effectiveness. They stood and walked and held position because their master told them to, and the telling was the entirety of their motivation. On the third night, a crow landed on the station's roof. It landed 2 meters from where Naruto sat. It cocked its head. Its right eye was the wrong color, a deep, unnatural red that had nothing to do with bird genetics and everything to do with the man whose awareness lived behind it. Naruto looked at the crow. He looked at that red eye. He smiled. "Hello, Itachi," he said to the bird, to the distance, to the genius watching through a construct of chakra and feathers. "I wondered how long you would wait." The crow stared at him with its borrowed eye. Then it spread its wings and was gone. South, fast, a black shape against the stars that carried intelligence back to the man who sent it. Naruto watched it go. "Bring your partner," he said to the empty sky. "I have room for both of you." Kisame Hoshigaki emerged from a river the way a landslide emerges from a mountainside, with the kind of inevitability that makes onlookers step backward before conscious thought engages. He came up from the current of the river Tenchi, 3 miles east of Naruto's border station, walking upright through the shallows without breaking stride. Samahata slung across his back with its bandages half loose and its living surface rippling with hunger. Water cascaded off his blue-gray skin. His grin was the grin of a man who had been waiting for this since the intelligence report crossed his desk. Wide, sharp-toothed, reaching something genuine behind the shark-like features. "You're the kid that made Zabuza into a statue," Kasame said, planting his feet on the riverbank. He rolled one massive shoulder. Samahata chittered against his back, the living sword sensing chakra sources nearby, its mouth teeth grinding with anticipation. "I read the mission report, the part where his blade turned to rust while he held it." He tilted his head, the motion surprisingly bird-like for a man his size. "I want to try that. See if mine does the same thing." Naruto stood on the bank 15 meters away. His robes were dry despite the morning mist off the river. His hands were at his sides. Behind him, his paladins had been told to stay. This was between him and the man who had come looking for something he would find. "Samahata will survive the encounter better than you will," Naruto said pleasantly. Kasame's grin widened. That's what I like to hear. He charged. The distance between them evaporated. Kisame's speed was absurd for a man his size, the muscle density of an S-rank missing nin propelling 250 pounds of killing intent across open ground in under a second. Samahata came off his back mid-sprint, the bandages tearing free, the true form revealed. A scaled, spiked, living weapon of dark blue chitin and hunger, its surface rippling as it reached for the chakra signature ahead of it. Naruto raised 2 fingers. Chronobind. Golden light bloomed from those fingers in a ring that caught Samahata's leading edge 3 feet from Naruto's chest. The binding field wrapped the blade's surface in temporal acceleration. Decades of metal fatigue compressed into the contact point, stress fractures propagating through the living sword's chitinous scales. Samahata screamed. The living weapon's voice was a frequency that vibrated in the back teeth, the sound of something alive and afraid. Kasame's reflexes saved it. He reversed his grip, yanked Samahata backward before the aging could reach the blade's core. 2 of the outer scales fell away, ancient, crumbling, dead gray against the green grass. The rest of the weapon survived, its surface pulsing with regeneration as the living tissue compensated for the loss. Kasame looked at his blade, looked at the fallen scales, looked at Naruto. His grin had not faded, it had intensified. "Fast," he said. The appreciation in his voice was genuine, the sound of a connoisseur evaluating something excellent. "Real fast. Let's see what happens with more water." He drove Samahata into the earth. Both hands came up. "Water release, super shark bomb." The river behind him responded. The entire river Tenchi lurched upward as if a god had reached beneath the surface and lifted, thousands of tons of water rising, shaping, compressing into a shark form the size of a 3-story building. It opened jaws wide enough to swallow a house and rocketed toward Naruto with the force of a collapsed dam. Naruto watched it come. The water's shadow fell over him. The spray hit his face. He raised one hand, palm open, fingers relaxed. Chrono-anastasis. The shark unhappened. Every molecule of water that had been gathered, shaped, given form and purpose by Kisame's chakra was pushed backward through time to the moment before it was gathered. The jutsu deconstructed at the foundational level, the technique unwinding like thread pulled from a seam. The water did not splash. It did not crash. It simply returned to the river as if it had never left, the surface settling with a gentle ripple that had no business being gentle, given what had been hanging in the air a heartbeat earlier. Kasame watched the river go flat. The biggest technique in his arsenal, the attack that had overwhelmed 3-man Jonin squads, had ceased to exist, as if Naruto had found the undo button on reality itself. Kasame laughed. A real laugh. Full-chested, head back, the kind of laugh that comes from the belly of a man who has been looking for this his entire life. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I see what's happening here." He pulled Samahata from the earth and jammed the living blade against his own chest. The merger was instant. Kasame's body reshaping as Samahata's biology fused with his own. His skin deepened from blue-gray to midnight. His musculature doubled. Gills split along his neck. His chakra reserves, already vast enough to earn him the title of the tailless-tailed beast, tripled as the merged form drew on Samahata's stolen stores. He was enormous. He was the most dangerous thing in the water release world made manifest. He looked like a god of the deep ocean given legs and intent, and his intent was simple: hit the boy in white with everything he had. Kasame closed the distance again, faster this time. The merged forms enhanced physicality, making his movement a blur that most Sharingan would struggle to follow. His fist cocked back, his body committed, every fiber of his being merged with every fiber of his weapon, compressed into a single strike aimed at Naruto's center mass. The impact point arrived. Above the riverbank, the sky split with golden light. The clock face materialized, ornate, massive, 50 meters across, its numerals burning in that ancient, pre-human script that had accompanied every major deployment of Astaroth's power. The hands ticked. Each tick pressed the air down like a god's heartbeat. Kisame's fist struck a wall of compressed time. Every molecule of his merged form, at the exact instant of maximum extension, hit a barrier where the flow of seconds had been thickened to amber. His knuckles entered the field and stopped. His wrist entered and stopped. His forward momentum died at the contact point as if the air itself had turned solid. He was stuck. mid-punch, mid-grin. His merged form's colossal fist frozen in a field of golden light, while the rest of his body strained against the immovable boundary of time itself, refusing to carry him forward. Naruto stepped through the field from the inside. He walked past the frozen fist, casually, the way one walks past furniture, and placed his palm against Kasame's massive, blue-scaled chest. He read the soul. Kasame was simple in the way a good blade is simple. One purpose, clearly defined, served with total commitment. He loved strength. He loved the collision of his power against something greater. He had killed 100 people and smiled at 30 of them because those 30 were worth the fight. He was loyal to the concept of being beaten fairly, and the ones he respected most were the ones who proved they earned the win. His soul was violent and honest and uncomplicated by the kind of self-deception that made people like Danzo repulsive to touch. Naruto's expression softened. "You deserved better opponents," he said, and meant it the way an artist means it when they see a masterwork hung in a room too small for it. Kasame's eyes, the only muscles still free within the merged form, darted to Naruto's face. There was something in them that wasn't fear, something that might have been recognition, understanding, a fighter seeing the thing that outclassed him and feeling, in that final moment, the satisfaction of knowing it existed. Soul magic. Paladin. White gold light erupted from Naruto's palm and flooded through the merged form like sunrise through deep water. It found Kasame's core, the place where will and personality and the joy of combat lived, and it reached in and began to rebuild. Kasame's merged body thrashed against the frozen time field, once, twice, 3 times. 3 full seconds of resistance. 3 seconds where that vast, cheerful, violent spirit fought the restructuring with everything it had. Then the thrashing stopped. The merged form fell away, Samahata separating from its host, shrinking back to blade form with a strange, luminous glow now emanating from its hilt. The living weapon had been converted alongside its wielder. Its hunger remained, but its hunger now served. Kasame's body reformed at full height. His skin returned to its normal blue-gray. His muscles settled. His posture straightened. Spine perfect, shoulders level. The stance of a soldier whose commanding officer had just walked into the room. His eyes went gold. The halo formed. Pale, warm, steady, he bowed. And in the blank gold of his new eyes, in the set of his converted features, there was almost, the residue of a grin. A trace memory of the last genuine expression he wore before the light took everything else. The ghost of a man who found what he was looking for. Kasame rose and took his position at Naruto's left. Samahata hummed against his back in a frequency that matched the golden light's pulse. A crow landed on a branch 20 meters away. Its red eye blinked once. Then Itachi stepped from the tree line. He came the way he always came, with the absence of announcement that was its own kind of statement. Hands in the pockets of his Akatsuki cloak. Back straight. The Mangekyou Sharingan active in both eyes. Those 3-blade patterns spinning with the lazy menace of something that had killed more people than most armies, and felt each death as a personal failure rather than in a personal triumph. He looked at Kasame kneeling. He looked at the halo. He looked at the golden eyes that had been laughing and bright and alive 12 seconds ago and were now twin pools of luminous compliance. He looked at Naruto. "I know what you are," Itachi said. His voice carried across the clearing with the weight of a man who has spent years constructing sentences that carry exactly the weight he intends. "And I know what you intend." Naruto tilted his head. "Then you know how this ends. I know how you believe it ends." A bird called in the canopy above them. The morning light strengthened by 1 degree. 2 men and a boy stood in a forest clearing where the grass was still flattened from Kasame's fight, and the air itself seemed to hold still the way air holds still before something irreversible happens. "Fight as long as you need to," Naruto said. His voice was gentle. "The outcome has already been decided." Itachi's Mangekyou spun. The genjutsu hit like a wall falling. Tsukuyomi, the supreme illusion, the technique that compressed 72 hours of subjective experience into a single moment of eye contact. It deployed at the speed of thought. It required nothing except visual connection, and Itachi's eyes had been locked on Naruto since he emerged from the trees. Naruto's eyes closed. Chronostasis. The genjutsu froze mid-deployment. The psychic architecture of Tsukuyomi, the entire constructed reality of 72 hours of subjective torment, suspended at the exact instant it reached the threshold of Naruto's consciousness. It hung there like a frozen wave, visible to Itachi's Sharingan as a technique that should have landed, should have already begun its 72-hour sentence, and was instead suspended in a bubble of stop time at the border of a mind it could never reach. Itachi released the technique. The frozen remnant dissipated like breath on glass. He stepped back, one step. His expression remained composed, the composure of a man who built his reputation on never revealing what he felt. But something behind his eyes shifted. The Mangekyo had been his ultimate weapon since the night he killed his clan, the eye technique that ended fights before they began. And a child in white had suspended it the way one hangs a coat on a hook. Itachi formed a hand seal. His left eye bled, the red tear that preceded his second ultimate technique. Amaterasu. Black fire erupted from his left Mangekyo, the flames of the sun goddess, fire that burned everything, that could not be extinguished, that consumed whatever the user's vision focused on until nothing remained. They leapt toward Naruto in a wave of absolute destruction, the temperature in the clearing spiking by 40 degrees in under a second. Naruto opened his eyes. He looked at the black fire. Chrono anastasis. The Amaterasu unhappened. The flames ran backward, every lick of black fire reversing through its own existence, contracting back toward its point of origin, pulling into Itachi's eye as if being rewound on a spool. The fire that burned without end returned to the nothing it was before Itachi's will called it into being. Itachi's Mangekyo bled heavier. Two techniques, his greatest, deployed at full power, undone as if they were practice exercises from a Genin academy. He wiped blood from his cheek with the back of his hand, and his breath came one increment faster than his training permitted. Susanoo manifested. The ribcage first. Ethereal bone structure blooming from Itachi's body in ribs of burning chakra. Then the arms. Then the skull, that demon's face with its empty eyes and its permanent scream. The armor filled in layer by layer, musculature of spectral red-orange light, wrapping the skeletal frame until Itachi stood at the center of a 30-foot war god assembled from the peak of his bloodline's power. In Susanoo's right hand, the Totsuka blade materialized. The legendary sealing sword, the spiritual weapon that trapped everything it pierced in an infinite dream. Itachi raised it. The blade's edge hummed with a frequency that distorted space around its cutting line. He swung. The Totsuka descended toward Naruto like a falling building. The sealing edge aimed to pierce and trap, to lock this impossible child in an eternal genjutsu prison that even a god could not escape. Chrono bind. Golden light caught the blade's edge. The binding field did something new here, something the witnesses at the bridge in Wave Country had never seen. It did not age the metal. The Totsuka was not physical, it was spiritual. So the chrono bind aged the technique itself, the sealing mechanism, the soul trap property that made the weapon legendary. It pushed the enchantment forward through its own temporal existence, accelerating its duration until the sealing magic expired. Centuries of remaining power compressed into 5 seconds of golden light, the Totsuka remained in Susanoo's grip. It was just a sword now, just shaped chakra with a sharp edge. The thing that made it the most feared weapon in legend was simply gone. Itachi let Susanoo dissolve. The spectral warrior faded. The ribcage dissipated. The armor unwound. Itachi stood in the clearing with empty hands and blood drying on both cheeks, the Mangekyo spinning one final time in eyes that had seen more death than most people absorb in multiple lifetimes. He was breathing hard. The Mangekyo's toll was mounting. Each use burning chakra and lifespan simultaneously. 3 major deployments in under a minute. His lungs burned. His vision blurred at the edges. He looked at Naruto. Naruto looked back at him. The boy in white had not moved, had not raised his hands above waist height, had not broken a sweat or elevated his breathing or shown any indication that 3 S-rank techniques from the greatest Uchiha who ever lived had constituted anything more than a polite introduction. You have spent your entire existence running toward a future that was always mine to write, Naruto said softly. Itachi's expression did something it had not done in front of another person since the night he left Konoha, wearing his brother's hatred, like a wound he chose to carry. It cracked. Just barely. Just at the edges of his mouth and the corners of his eyes. The composure that defined Itachi Uchiha giving way to something underneath that was exhausted and human and very, very tired. "You are going to end the world," Itachi said. "I am going to save it." Naruto's voice carried that absolute certainty, the warmth and the weight of it filling the space between them like heat from a bonfire. "I know the difference. That is the tragedy of what you are about to argue." Itachi was still for a moment. His bleeding Manjikyo looked at Naruto's face, reading it the way he read everything, with the intelligence that had let a 13-year-old massacre his entire clan and frame it as madness rather than mercy. He was looking for doubt, for hesitation, for the crack in the certainty that would let an argument slide through. There was nothing. The certainty was absolute in the way that bedrock is absolute, present beneath everything, visible only at the edges where other things had eroded away. "Free will," Itachi said. His voice was level and measured and carried the weight of a lifetime of choosing to suffer so others could choose freely. The ability to choose, even when the choice is wrong, even when it produces atrocity, is the only thing that makes love real. Peace without the capacity to choose it is imprisonment wearing a kind face. Naruto listened. His head was tilted. His expression was engaged, genuinely engaged, not performing engagement, but actually present for the argument, the way a man is present for a conversation he respects, even though the outcome will never change. "You loved your brother enough to let him hate you for years," Naruto said when the silence indicated Itachi had finished. "You protected him by letting him believe you were a monster. You called that love." His expression was full of something that had no clean name, admiration and sorrow braided together until they were indistinguishable. "I am removing the part that makes love hurt. What is wrong with that?" "Everything," Itachi said. "The hurt is what makes it real. If love cannot choose to stay despite suffering, it is reflex. It is programming. It is the thing you make your paladins do." Naruto was still for a moment. The morning light came through the trees and caught his white robes and made them glow faintly at the edges. And for 1 second there was something almost like consideration in his blue eyes. As if the argument had touched something. As if one sentence from a dying man had reached past the certainty and found something underneath. That remembered what it was like to be 12 years old and lonely and choosing to stay in a village that hated him. It passed. "Your pain made you who you are," Naruto said, and his voice was the gentlest it had been since Gaara. "Your peace will make you something greater." He raised his hand. Itachi did not run. He stood with his hands at his sides and his mankyo spinning one final revolution in eyes that were going blind by degrees. The legendary curse of the Uchiha's strongest eyes, the slow darkening that came from overuse, the price of being what the world needed him to be. He stood still and let it come, because Itachi Uchiha had never in his life run from anything that needed to happen. Tears ran down his cheeks. They came without permission, rolling over the dried blood, cutting lines through the residue, falling from his jaw to the grass below. He was crying the way a man cries at the end of something, with total awareness of what is being lost and total inability to prevent the losing. Soul Magic, Paladin. White gold light erupted from Naruto's palm and found Itachi's chest. It entered through the sternum and spread outward in threads that followed his chakra network, his nervous system, the architecture of a body that had served a cause larger than itself since childhood. It reached his core, that place where Itachi lived, the real Itachi, the one behind the composure and the silence and the lifetime of choosing to be hated so his brother could live. And it began. Itachi did not scream. That was the worst part. He stood there with tears running and his eyes open and his hands at his sides, and his expression moved through stages the way a sunset moves through colors, each one visible, each one fading into the next. There was grief first, then something like relief. The relief of a man who has been carrying a weight for so long that putting it down feels like death and freedom simultaneously. Then acceptance. Then the smoothing, the simplification, the complex, churning, beautiful human storm of Itachi's inner life settling into something flat and golden and still. His memories remained. His capability remained. His mastery of fire and genjutsu and the Sharingan's three tomoe techniques and the Mangekyo's remaining power, all preserved. What went was the choice. The person who decided when to deploy those capabilities and why. The man who loved his brother enough to let that love become a weapon aimed at himself. The Mangekyo spun one final time. The three-blade pattern slowed. The red drained from outside in, crimson becoming amber, becoming gold. Itachi's legendary eyes, the eyes that had cast Tsukuyomi and summoned Amaterasu and held Susanoo together through the force of will, filled with steady, luminous gold. They would still function. The techniques would still work. They simply belonged to someone else now. The halo formed. A ring of pale gold light hovering behind Itachi's head, casting its glow on his dark hair, making him look like the saints in paintings from a religion that did not exist in this world. The religion that Naruto was building in real time with every conversion. Itachi bowed, deep, graceful. The bow of the most capable man in the world acknowledging the thing that surpassed him. Naruto looked at him for a long moment. He reached out and wiped one thumb across the tear track on Itachi's new blank cheek. The last evidence of the person who had lived there, still wet, still warm. "You would have been the best of us," he said. He turned away. At the edge of the clearing, Kasame stood in paladin attention, watching the conversion with gold eyes and that blank, devoted expression. He had watched his partner of years, the man he had fought beside and respected, and perhaps come as close to caring about as Kasame's nature allowed, be unmade in front of him. His expression had not changed. His body had not moved. The gold eyes reflected the light of Itachi's new halo without registering its significance, because there was nothing left in Kasame to register significance. The soul that would have reacted, the man who would have appreciated the poetic cruelty of watching his closest ally join him in divine servitude, was gone. All that remained was the tool, observing its environment, ready to serve. Two paladins stood in the clearing, two of the Akatsuki's most feared operatives, the monster and the prodigy, the tailless-tailed beast and the greatest Uchiha, standing side by side in golden halos and blank devotion, their skills intact, their legendary reputations intact, their selves erased and rebuilt into architecture that served one purpose. Naruto clasped his hands behind his back. "The world does not need more warriors," he said, to the clearing, to the morning, to the souls he could feel across the continent stirring with the first distant awareness that something had shifted. "It needs fewer choices." He walked east. His army followed. Hidan found Naruto on a road in the land of hot water, because Hidan had the subtlety of a throne building and the tactical intelligence to match. He came down the road screaming about Jashin. The triple-bladed scythe was already out, spinning on its cable, cutting air with the sound of a thing that wanted to be inside someone's chest cavity. His silver hair caught the afternoon sun. His bare chest displayed the pendant and the ritual scarring and the absolute frothing confidence of a man whose immortality had convinced him that nothing in the world posed a genuine threat. "There you are, you golden-eyed, freak-making son of a..." The profanity was creative. Hidan had a poet's commitment to blasphemy, if nothing else. He drew his ritual circle in blood on the road surface, bit his thumb, completed the Jashin ceremony with the theatrical devotion of a man who worshipped death, the way most people worship comfort, with his whole chest, without reservation, without the slightest shred of doubt. The cursing circle activated. Hidan's skin went black and white, that skeletal pattern that meant the curse was live, that any damage he inflicted on himself would transfer to the target linked through blood contact. He had already thrown a senbon that grazed Naruto's cheek. A thin line of red that should have been enough. He stabbed the retractable spear through his own chest with the ecstatic expression of a man experiencing divine communion through self-inflicted trauma. Nothing happened. Naruto was standing outside the circle. He had been inside it when the ceremony began. He was outside it now. His cheek still showed the thin line of the senbon graze, but the curse link, the soul connection that Jashin's ritual required, had found nothing to connect to. Soul magic at its baseline was a constant, passive reality. Nothing reached Naruto's soul without permission. The ritual had knocked and found the door locked and barred and guarded by something that made Jashin look like a street performer with a tin cup. Hidan stared. The spear was still through his own chest. The blood was still on his lips. The ceremony was still active. It was doing nothing. Your god, Naruto said pleasantly, is a smaller thing than you believe it is. Chronobind. Golden light wrapped around Hidan's body like bandages tightening. The temporal acceleration began at his extremities and worked inward, his fingers aging, his skin thinning, his cellular regeneration kicking into overdrive as the immortality struggled to compensate for years being compressed into seconds. But regeneration requires fuel, immortality requires energy, and the chronobind was pushing time forward faster than any reserve could replenish. Hidan's immortality, that blessing from a death god that had made him unkillable for decades, ran on empty within 6 seconds. The regeneration sputtered. The cells stopped replacking. The body that had survived decapitation and dismemberment and being buried alive began to fail in the ordinary way that mortal bodies fail when they reach the end of their allotted span. Hidan screamed. The sound was high and confused and utterly disbelieving. The voice of a man whose entire identity was built on the premise that he could never die. Experiencing the novel sensation of doing exactly that, he fell apart. The aging field released. What hit the road's surface was dust in the rough shape of a man who had worshipped pain and found at the end that pain was the last faithful thing left. 4 seconds later, Kakuzu arrived. He came from the tree line like a landslide, 5 hearts beating in his patchwork body, a century of survival. Masks half deployed at his back, each one housing a stolen organ from a legendary shinobi he had killed with thread-wrapped hands. He saw Hidan on the ground, registered the dust, and his expression behind the face covering moved by 0 millimeters. He attacked. Chronostasis Grigora. 5 golden spheres materialized simultaneously, one around each of Kakuzu's hearts. The heartbeats froze at the moment of maximum contraction. The blood stopped. The bodies attached to the masks stopped. Kakuzu himself, suspended mid-lunge, threads extended from his arms like black tentacles, reaching for a target he would never touch, froze in the air. Naruto walked past him. He turned back once, regarding the frozen form with the expression of a man assessing whether a building is worth renovating or demolishing. He reached through the frozen space with soul magic. 5 hearts, 5 stolen souls, modified and enslaved, and underneath them, Kakuzu's own heart, the original, ancient and heavy with nothing except contempt for everything that breathed. A man who had killed his own village's elders and felt nothing about it except that they had owed him more. A soul with no love in it, no grief, no broken beauty that could be repurposed. Death is not what I offer, Naruto said to the frozen form. Death is what you chose. What I offer is something far more permanent. He raised his hand toward the suspended hearts. Soul magic pulsed once, a single targeted burst aimed at the cores. 5 hearts, frozen in time, suspended between beats, receiving the full weight of a divine assessment that found them worthless. The hearts cracked. Inside their temporal prisons, the organs simply failed. The structural integrity compromised at the soul level, the thing that animated them withdrawn in a single instant. When the chronostasis fields released 1 second later, the bodies fell. Threads went slack. Masks hit the earth with wooden sounds. Kakuzu's original body collapsed with the rest, a century of survival ending with the particular indignity of a man who was never important enough to be converted. Naruto brushed road dust from his sleeve. He kept walking. Behind him, 2 of the Akatsuki's most feared operatives lay on a road in the land of hot water. One reduced to aged remains, the other collapsed in a heap of dead organs and empty masks. 90 seconds. The entire encounter had lasted 90 seconds from Hidan's opening scream to Kakuzu's final collapse. It was the morning of what Naruto knew would be a very full day. A Megakure reigned. It always reigned. The village of hidden rain existed beneath a permanent overcast that Nagato's techniques maintained as both a sensor network and a statement. The god of this place wept perpetually, and his tears fell on everyone equally, and there was something in that equality that its citizens found comforting even as they drowned in it. Naruto walked toward the village from the east. He walked on the road. He did not hide, did not suppress his presence, did not take any action that suggested he was doing anything other than arriving. His white robes caught the first drops of Amegakure's eternal rain and shed them like oil shed water, the fabric remaining pristine, the golden star on his forehead remaining visible, the warm expression remaining untroubled by the weather. Behind him, his paladins marched. Itachi and Kasame flanked him, 3 paces back, 1 to each side. Former Akatsuki members walking toward the Akatsuki seat of power, wearing golden halos instead of red clouds. Sasuke and Gaara held the rear. Zabuza and Haku walked the outer edges of the formation. 7 figures in white, their halos glowing through the gray curtain of rain, approaching the village of hidden rain like a procession, like a funeral march, like the arrival of something that the people watching from their windows would tell their children about if they were still capable of telling when it was over. The village noticed. Sensor seals fired throughout Amegakure, Pain's surveillance network detecting the incoming chakra signatures and feeding them to the 6 paths that served as both the village's leadership and its ultimate defense. Civilian eyes appeared in windows. Shinobi appeared on rooftops. The entire village held its breath the way a body holds its breath when it sees the surgeon approach with the instrument. The 6 paths of pain descended. They came from the central tower. 6 bodies landing in the avenue ahead of Naruto's procession in a semicircle of corpse-reanimated power. Each one bore the Rinnegan, those concentric violet rings, the eyes of the Sage of 6 Paths, burning with a light that said these bodies were only bodies, and the mind behind them was watching from somewhere safer. The Deva Path stood at center. The body that had been Yahiko, orange hair, pierced face, the shell of a dead friend puppeted by a living one's grief. It raised one hand, palm forward. "You will stop here," Pain said through the Deva Path's mouth. The voice was even and divine in the way that Pain's voice was always divine, carrying the weight of a man who believed he was God because no one alive had proven otherwise. "State your purpose or be destroyed." Naruto stopped walking. He looked at the 6 bodies. He looked at the piercings, the chakra receivers, the antenna that connected dead flesh to living will. He looked at the Rinnegan in each face and felt beneath them the thin thread of connection running back to the tower behind them, to the skeletal man on the throne, to Nagato. "I do not conquer," Naruto said. His voice carried through the rain like something that did not require volume to be heard. "I cure." The Deva Path's hand clenched. The air pressure around Naruto shifted. The gravitational buildup that preceded Shinra Tensei, the technique that had leveled villages. "Animal Path," Pain commanded. The Animal Path stepped forward. Its hands came together. The summoning began. Massive creatures materializing from smoke and impact. A giant chameleon, a multi-headed dog, a great bird. Colossal creatures, each bearing the Rinnegan in their eyes, each controlled by the same mind. Crashing into the rain-soaked avenue with impacts that cracked pavement and shook buildings. The great bird dove from above. A wingspan of 30 meters. Talons aimed at the white-robed figure in the street below. Naruto looked up. The golden clock face bloomed in the sky above Amegakure, spreading across the overcast like a second sun, its ornate numerals burning through the rain clouds, its hands ticking with the heartbeat of something older than the world it overlooked. Chronobind. Golden light descended in beams, one for each summon. The binding fields wrapped each creature in temporal acceleration. The giant bird's wings froze mid-beat and aged, feathers graying, skin thinning, the massive body succumbing to the passage of centuries and heartbeats. It fell from the sky as bones. The chameleon's scales dulled and cracked, and it crumbled where it stood. The multi-headed dog's regeneration ran its course in compressed time. Every possible regeneration cycle expended in 3 seconds, leaving the body with nothing left to draw on. 3 colossal summons reduced to scattered remains in less time than it took Pain to register their loss. Amegakure civilians watched from their windows. They watched the creatures they had seen protect their village fall like leaves in autumn. One after another, their ancient forms returning to dust under beams of gold light that came from a clock face hanging in their sky, like something out of a holy text. A woman on the 4th floor of an apartment building pressed her hand over her mouth. A child tugged his mother's sleeve and pointed and asked what the gold circles were. She had no answer. The Preta Path charged. This was the absorption body, designed to devour any chakra technique, to drink energy attacks the way a sponge drinks water. It sprinted toward Naruto with hands extended, palms forward, the absorption barrier activating as a visible shimmer in the rain. Naruto extended one hand. The Preta Path's palms made contact, touching Naruto's fingers, the absorption mechanism engaging, reaching for whatever energy animated the boy in white. It found soul magic. Soul magic was not chakra. It did not operate within the system the Rinnegan's absorption path was built to counter. The Preta Path's absorption found something it could not drink, something that flowed backward through the contact point, running upstream through the absorption mechanism, reaching the chakra receiver rods that connected this body to Nagato's will. The connection severed. The Preta Path collapsed. Its Rinnegan eyes went blank, the violet light extinguishing as the puppeted body lost its animator. It hit the wet pavement face first with the particular gracelessness of something that was never alive to begin with. Pain's remaining paths regrouped. The Asura Path's body began to reconfigure, mechanical modifications opening in its skull and arms, missile arrays deploying, the full arsenal of a converted weapon system aimed at the boy in white. Naruto raised 2 fingers. Chronostasis. The Asura Path froze mid-transformation, suspended in golden light with its weapon systems half deployed, caught between one form and another, locked in the space between seconds where nothing moved and nothing changed. The human path and the Naraka path moved simultaneously, one reaching for Naruto's head with the soul-ripping technique, the other hanging back with its summoned judge. The human path's hand extended toward Naruto's skull. Naruto caught the wrist. He held the human path's arm the way you hold a tool you are about to discard, with full awareness of what it is and complete disinterest in what it wants. Soul magic pulsed through the contact. The human path's body, like the Preta's before it, lost its connection. The chakra receivers went inert. The Rinnegan dimmed. It collapsed. The Naraka Path's King of Hell manifested behind its summoner, that massive head erupting from the earth with its mouth open, ready to pass judgment. Naruto glanced at it. Chronoanastasis. The summoning reversed. The King of Hell returned to wherever it came from, pushed backward through the moments of its manifestation until it reached the moment before it was called, at which point it simply wasn't. The Naraka Path, lacking its primary function, stood in the rain with nothing left to contribute. Naruto walked past it. His fingertips brushed its shoulder. The connection severed on contact. One path remained. The Deva Path, the strongest, the most capable, the one that bore the face of the friend Nagato had loved most and lost worst. It stood in the rain 30 meters from Naruto with its arms raised and its expression the blank mask of divine authority that Nagato projected through it. Almighty push! Shinra Tensei at maximum scale. The shockwave was visible, a wall of distorted air expanding from the Deva Path's position in every direction, flattening everything it touched. Buildings cracked, windows shattered for blocks in every direction. The rain itself was pushed sideways in sheets. The force that had destroyed the entirety of Konoha in another timeline erupted from the body of a dead friend, aimed at the living embodiment of something Nagato could not comprehend. Naruto stood in the center of it. Time reversal. The Shinra Tensei reversed. Every particle of displaced air stopped its outward expansion and began returning. The gravitational force that Nagato's technique had released rewound. Every vector, every joule of kinetic energy flowing backward along its trajectory with equal and opposite force. The shockwave collapsed inward. The buildings that had cracked uncracked. The rain that had been pushed sideways fell straight again, and the force that had expanded from the Deva Path returned to the Deva Path. Yahiko's body, the shell Nagato loved, the friend he carried in death because he could not carry him in life, hit the wall of the central tower behind it with force sufficient to crater stone. It embedded in the masonry and stopped moving. The Rinnegan in its eyes flickered once, then dimmed. 6 paths. 6 of the most powerful combat bodies the shinobi world had ever produced, dismantled in under 3 minutes. Naruto began climbing the tower. He walked up the exterior wall the way one walks up a flight of stairs, each step adhering to the vertical surface through an application of power so casual it did not warrant a technique name. The rain ran past him. His robes remained dry. His expression remained that warm, patient, compassionate thing that everyone who faced him found more terrible than rage. Conan was waiting at the top. She stood on the tower's roof with the rain soaking through her Akatsuki cloak and her blue hair plastered to her skull, and 600 billion sheets of paper hidden in the structures around her, primed and explosive and ready to be deployed in the technique that made her a legend. Her amber eyes watched Naruto reach the rooftop with the expression of a woman who had already decided how this would end and had chosen to make the ending expensive. "I will not let you reach him," she said. Her voice was the voice of a person defending the last thing they love with the full knowledge that the defense will fail. There was no hope in it, just commitment. Naruto stood before her, rain between them, the village below them, Nagato somewhere behind the door she was guarding. "You will try," Naruto said gently. "I will wait until you are finished." Conan attacked. The paper came from everywhere, from the buildings, from the streets, from the very walls of the tower they stood on. 600 billion sheets, each one an explosive tag, each one primed, each one guided by a will and a grief and a love that had been building for 20 years since a boy named Yahiko died on a rainy battlefield. The sky turned white with paper. The air became a storm of compressed explosive force aimed at a single point. Paper, person of God. The detonation was biblical in everything except the word. The explosion consumed the tower top, consumed the air above it, consumed a sphere of space 50 meters in diameter in pure destructive force. Light replaced rain for 1 full second. The shockwave from 600 billion explosive tags, firing simultaneously, reached the ground level and blew windows off buildings 6 blocks away. A shinobi on a rooftop in the Eastern District was thrown off his feet by the pressure wave. He hit the wall behind him hard enough to lose consciousness. When he woke 10 minutes later and looked up, the sky over the central tower was gold. Chronostasis. The explosion, all of it, every expanding particle of fire and force and paper and energy, froze. Suspended in a sphere of golden light the size of a large building, captured at the moment of maximum expansion. The fireball hung in the air above Omegakure like a second sun wrapped in amber. Inside it, every mode of destructive energy was locked in the instant between motion and stillness. Naruto walked through it. He moved through the frozen explosion the way a man walks through a museum exhibit, aware of the destruction around him, appreciating its scale, untouched by its intent. Suspended fire parted around his white robes. Frozen shockwave fragments hung in the air to his left and right like sculptures. He walked through the captured devastation with his hands clasped behind his back. Conan stood on the other side of the frozen sphere. She was breathing hard. Her paper supply was exhausted. 20 years of preparation, the technique she built for the day someone came for Nagato, suspended in golden light and rendered meaningless. Naruto emerged from the frozen explosion and stood before her. He reached soul magic, extended through the air between them, finding her soul before his hand found her body. He read her at distance. Her soul was almost clean. The grief was tidal. Yahiko's death, Nagato's decay, the world that had broken everyone she loved and given nothing back. But underneath the grief, the love was vast and pure and utterly genuine, in a way that made Naruto's expression shift into something that had not appeared on his face since Haku's conversion. Something that recognized beauty and intended to preserve it while removing the thing that made it meaningful. "You are worth saving," he told her. His hand found her cheek, warm, gentle, the touch of someone who genuinely believed what they were doing was kindness. "He is worth saving. I will save you both." "Don't," Conan said, one word, her voice breaking on it. "Soul magic paladin." The light entered. Conan's grief, that vast 20-year construction of loss and purpose, began to dissolve. The love remained. It was redirected. The paper around her shoulders reformed. Golden origami, each fold luminous, each sheet catching the rain and turning it to mist before it reached her skin. Her amber eyes lightened by 1 shade, 2 shades, 3, becoming gold from the outside in, the way dawn enters a room through a window. She did not scream. She made a sound that was softer, a single exhaled breath that carried everything she was going to say and never would. Then her expression smoothed. The grief left her face like tension, leaving a body that has finally, forcibly, been made to relax. The halo formed. Conan's blue hair caught its light and looked like the sky at the edge of evening, that transition point where day becomes something else. She stepped aside from the door. Naruto entered. The room behind the door was a throne room. If thrones could be made of grief and medical machinery and the fading body of a man who had given everything to a dream that had eaten him alive. Nagato sat in the mechanical chair that kept his body functioning. Tubes and supports and chakra receivers bristling from his emaciated frame like the skeleton of something that had once been magnificent. His red hair hung lank. His Rinnegan eyes, those concentric violet rings, the greatest dojutsu in existence, burned with a feverish light that was less divine authority and more the desperate luminescence of something refusing to go out. He looked up at Naruto. There was nothing in his expression except understanding. "I know who you are," Nagato said. His voice was hollowed by years of speaking through bodies that weren't his own. Thin, rasping, the sound of a man whose lungs had been overworked since childhood. "I know what you want." Naruto crouched. He brought himself to Nagato's eye level, the way you crouch to speak to a child, except the child here was a man older and more broken and more powerful than almost anyone alive. Their eyes met, Rinnegan and warm blue, God's eyes and a God's eyes. Two people who had looked at the same burning world and drawn blueprints for its salvation that overlapped in every way except the one that mattered. "I want the same thing you want," Naruto said. Peace, the absence of graves, the end of the machine that turns children into weapons. He held Nagato's gaze with the sincerity that made him terrible, because it was never false, it was never performed, it was always the genuine article. "The only difference between us is that I will succeed. You think removing free will is peace. I think it is the only peace that lasts." Nagato looked at him. The Rinnegan spun, those 6 rings in their concentric circles rotating with the weight of the sage's legacy, reading the boy before them, finding only the warmth and the absolute certainty and the love that consumed everything it touched. "Then we are enemies," Nagato said. The words came with the finality of a headstone being set. The last choice of a man who had been making choices his entire life and was about to lose the ability. "I have seen every version of this moment," Naruto said softly. "In every one of them, you kneel." He placed his hand against Nagato's chest. The Rinnegan flared. Nagato fought with the eyes of the Sage of 6 Paths. Gravitational force erupting from his body in a localized Shinra Tensei aimed at pushing Naruto's hand away. A repulsion born of desperation, the dying strength of a man defending the last thing he owned, his own will. Soul magic did not push. It did not pull. It entered through the gaps between force, flowing around the gravitational resistance, the way water flows around a stone, reaching past the Rinnegan's barrier, finding the soul underneath. Nagato's defenses were immense, layered, complex, reinforced by decades of willpower in the eyes of a god. They held for 3 seconds, then 4. Then the light reached past them. Inside Nagato, in the place where will and identity and the dream of peace through pain had lived for 20 years, the conversion began. His memories of Yahiko remained, the friendship, the dream they shared, the rain. His memories of Jiraiya remained, the teacher who gave them hope and then disappeared. His memories of Hanzo, of betrayal, of the moment he chose violence as his vehicle for peace. All preserved. The emotions attached to them, the love and grief and rage that had driven his every decision since Yahiko's death, began to change. The grief dissolved, the rage dissolved, the determination transformed from something self-directed into something owned by another. Nagato's skeletal hands gripped the arms of his throne, his jaw clenched. His Rinnegan eyes, those legendary rings, began to fill with gold from the outer edge inward, ring by ring, circle by circle. The violet fading, replaced by the steady luminescence of divine service. When the last ring filled, the conversion was complete. Nagato rose from his throne. The mechanical supports fell away, unnecessary now because paladins do not decay. His emaciated body straightened with the confidence of something no longer limited by the fragility that had defined it. He was still thin, still skeletal, still bearing the ravages of 20 years of overusing eyes that were never meant for his body. But the weakness was preserved rather than healed, frozen in its current state by the paladin conversion's refusal to let its vessels change without permission. He stood upright. His golden Rinnegan eyes looked at Naruto with the complete, total devotion that was the only thing paladins felt. The halo formed. Behind those golden rings, the eyes of the Sage of Six Paths converted to divine service. Something that had never existed before in the history of the shinobi world became real. A Rinnegan that served a mortal vessel. The eyes of God aimed by a boy in white robes who had decided what God should look like and was building it in real time from the raw materials of a broken world. Naruto stood in the throne room of Amegakure and looked at his newest paladin and felt the weight of what he now commanded. The Rinnegan. The gravitational control, the soul manipulation, the resurrection, all of it, preserved and perfect and aimed in one direction. "Rise," he said. Nagato rose fully. He bowed. The golden Rinnegan caught the light from the window, and for one moment the throne room was nothing except that light, warm and gold and total. When Naruto left Amegakure, 9 paladins walked with him through the rain, and the rain stopped. For the first time in 20 years, since pain took power, since Nagato began maintaining the eternal overcast as his sensor network, and his statement and his grief given weather patterns, the sky above Amegakure cleared. Sunlight hit the village streets for the first time in a generation. People emerged from doorways blinking, shading their eyes, looking up at a sky they had forgotten the color of. A woman on the central bridge held out her hand and found nothing falling into it. And she cried. Whether she cried from joy or from understanding what the absence meant, she never told anyone. Killer Bee sat on a rock above the ocean and rapped to himself. The training island was a mile off the coast of the Land of Lightning, a private space where the 8-Tails Jinchuriki trained at full power without risking infrastructure or civilian lives. The rock jutted from the cliff face at an angle that caught the evening sun, and Bee sat on it cross-legged with his 8 swords resting on the stone around him and his notebook open on one knee, pencil moving in time with the rhythm in his head. Keeping it real, keeping it tight, 8 tails burning with the thunder and the light. He stopped writing. On the ocean's surface below, 100 meters from the island's shore, a figure was walking. White robes, golden light. A procession of halos stretching behind him on the water, like a constellation that had fallen from the sky and learned to march. The figure was approaching the island from the south with the unhurried pace of something that did not need to rush because it owned the outcome of whatever came next. Bee stood up. His swords were in his hands faster than the motion could be tracked. One between each finger, one between his teeth, the full 7-blade style, plus the one held traditionally. His body shifted into the combat stance that made him one of the most dangerous people alive. Inside his mind, Yūki stirred. Yo, what the heck is this? Some kind of final boss, Bee said. He was rapping the assessment, his way of processing threat analysis through the lens that made sense to his brain. White-robed kid on the water walking, gold light stalking, halos behind him, and the ocean ain't talking. Bee! Yuki's voice rumbled from within. The 8-Tails' awareness pressed against the edges of their shared consciousness. Tense, alert, the ancient intelligence of a creature that had survived since the Sage's era, recognizing something it could not categorize. That presence is wrong. Whatever that is, it isn't chakra. Naruto stopped walking. He stood on the ocean surface 50 meters from the island's base and looked up at the cliff where Bee stood silhouetted against the evening sky. Killer Bee, Naruto called. His voice carried over the water without effort. Jinchuriki of the 8-Tails, the only host in history to achieve full partnership with his beast. Something almost like amusement moved across his face, genuine pleasure at encountering something worth respecting. I have been looking forward to meeting you. Bee grinned behind the blade between his teeth. He jumped, the 7-sword style deployed at full velocity, Bee dropping from the cliff edge in a spinning descent that turned his body into a blender of razor edges. 7 blades moved in independent arcs, each one targeting a different angle of approach. The combined technique creating a sphere of cutting force that most opponents could not enter without losing limbs. Naruto raised one hand. Chronostasis. Golden light caught 4 of the 7 blades mid-arc, freezing them in spatial bubbles, locking the steel at the moment of maximum velocity. But 3 blades made it through. 3 blades, guided by the absolute mastery of a man who had been perfecting this style since childhood, slipped between the frozen time spheres and continued their arcs toward their target. 2 grazed Naruto's arms. 1 caught his robe at the shoulder, parting the white fabric in a clean line. Contact. Real contact. Blood appeared on Naruto's left forearm. Thin lines, shallow but present. Naruto looked at the cuts. He looked at B. His expression did not change, but there was something. An acknowledgement, a recognition that the man in front of him was faster than the reflex defense, that Killer Bee's mastery of his blade style was genuine enough to find gaps in even time-frozen defenses. B landed on the water surface in a crouch, 3 blades still in play, the other 4 dropping from their frozen spheres as the chronostasis released. He was grinning. His whole face was grinning. Touched you, fool! Ya fool! He was rapping mid-combat because that was who Killer Bee was. A man for whom combat and music and joy were the same experience expressed through different outputs. Swords too fast for your gold light. 8 tails and me gonna win this fight! Yūki surged forward. The 8 tails erupted from Bee's body in full manifestation, a creature of impossible scale rising from the ocean surface. 8 tentacles, each one the length of a warship. 2 horns that caught the dying sunlight and cast shadows across the water for half a mile. Ink-black skin and ancient eyes, and the raw, fundamental power of something that had existed since the world was young. A Biju bomb charged between Yūki's horns, compressed chakra in a sphere, dense enough to warp the light around it, building toward the detonation yield that could level mountains. Naruto smiled. He called Kurama. Golden light erupted from his body, upward, outward, reshaping into a form that matched Yūki in scale. 9 tails of luminous divine energy spreading across the sky. Eyes of pure gold. A fox made of converted power, risen from the seal that no longer contained it because it no longer needed containment. The 9 tails in full divine manifestation. Every ounce of the creature's legendary chakra channeled through paladin architecture into something that was less a beast and more a force wearing a beast's shape. The 2-tailed beasts faced each other across the water. Yūki fired. The Biju bomb launched, a sphere of concentrated destruction screaming through the air at a velocity that turned the ocean surface to steam in its wake. It hit Kurama's golden form and detonated. Naruto's divine Biju bomb met it. The collision was visible from the mainland. The detonation point where 2-tailed beasts' ultimate attacks met produced a sphere of combined destruction and golden light that rose into the sky like a new star being born. The shockwave hit the ocean and raised a wave 30 meters high. The island behind B cracked in its foundations. When the light faded, both manifestations were still standing. Yuki's tentacles writhed. B's grin was undimmed inside the manifestation. His chakra and Yuki's working in the synchronization that made them unique, that made them the only Jinchuriki partnership in history that functioned as equals. Naruto raised both hands. Chronostasis Gregora. The golden sphere that formed was massive enough to encompass the entire island. Yuki's 8 tentacles froze mid-writhe. B's body, inside the manifestation, locked between one heartbeat and the next. The ocean surface within the sphere's radius stopped moving. Waves frozen at their crests, spray suspended in the air. The entire scene captured like a photograph taken by something with the authority to stop time for anything it wanted. Naruto walked across the frozen ocean. He climbed through the suspended spray. He entered the frozen manifestation, walking through Yuki's immobilized chakra form the way one walks through fog, until he found B at the center. The Jinchuriki's face was frozen in that grin. His swords were frozen mid-spin. His body was caught at the peak of emotion that would never complete. Naruto placed his palm against B's chest. He read the soul. B was joy. That was the simplest way to understand it. His soul was joy the way other people's souls were grief or ambition or hunger. He loved his beast. He loved his brother. He loved the feeling of blades in his hands and rhythm in his head, and the absolute freedom of being strong enough that nobody could make him do anything he did not want to do. And Yūki, wrapped around that soul, the 8 tails consciousness intertwined with its host, loved him back. Freely. Completely. Without reservation or resentment or the accumulated bitterness of centuries of imprisonment. They were partners in the truest sense. The thing every other Jinchuriki relationship in history had failed to achieve. Naruto was silent for a moment. His hand rested on B's chest and his eyes closed, and when he spoke, his voice carried something that was almost regret. "You had what all of them were looking for," he said. "A partnership. A real one." He opened his eyes. The regret was gone. The certainty remained. Soul Magic Paladin. He converted them together, host and beast, simultaneously, because they had always functioned as one, and separating them for the process would have been inelegant. The light entered B and flowed through their shared connection to Juki, filling both consciousness simultaneously, rewriting both wills in the same instant, converting two beings who had chosen each other freely into two beings who now served a third with the same completeness. The chronostasis field dropped. B stood straight, 8 swords still in his hands. His eyes, warm and expressive and full of the joy that made him who he was, went gold. His mouth opened and what came out was rhythm, because rhythm was capability and capability was preserved. But the words were different. The subject was different. Every rap that would come from that mouth for eternity would be an abstract musical devotion to the boy in white who owned every beat. Juki's form reshifted. The ink black became luminous blue-white. The tentacles settled. The horns caught the sunset and refracted it into golden bands across the water. A second-tailed beast in divine conversion, beside the 9 tails that joined to the army that was becoming something no force on earth could answer. The halo formed behind B's head. He bowed. Somewhere inside that bow and the mechanics of it, there was still the rhythm. The hips loose, the shoulders rolling, the motion set to a beat that only the body remembered because the person who set that beat had been written over. 2-tailed beasts. 9 paladins. Naruto stood on the ocean surface as the sun went down behind the Land of Lightning's mountains and felt the weight of what he had assembled. The end was approaching. The remaining obstacles were institutional rather than individual. The 5 Kage, the shinobi infrastructure, the idea of resistance itself. He had armies now. He had the eyes of the sage. He had 2 forces of nature converted to divine weapons. He had time, every second of it, past and present and future, answering to his will as easily as breath answered to lungs. Every war ends the same way, he said to the sunset, to the ocean, to the 2 converted forms standing behind him on the water. With graves. I am simply ending the war before the graves are dug. The 5 great nations learned what was coming the way you learn about a flood, in stages of denial, each one shorter than the last. The intelligence reports began arriving simultaneously across all 5 hidden villages. Witnesses in Amigakure who described the rain stopping. Reports from the Land of Water's coast where Kasame Hoshigaki's disappearance had been noted. The Cloud Village's own panicked alert when Killer B failed to return from his training island, and the only evidence left was a changed sky and a training rock split clean in half. The Kaj summoned each other. In an emergency summit that convened within 72 hours of the Cloud's distress call, the 5 most powerful leaders in the shinobi world sat across a table and looked at each other with faces that had lost the luxury of political maneuvering. Tsunade represented Konoha. She had read Kakashi's unfiled report, found in his apartment after the Jonin disappeared from the village 3 weeks prior, and the single paragraph had aged her face by 5 years. Kankuro held the Sand's seat as interim Kazekage, his brother's golden-eyed disappearance, the wound that had put him there. His puppet crow sat beside him on the floor, and its wooden expression matched his own. The 3rd Tsuchikage, old, powerful, skeptical of everything that had not been proven in front of his face. The 5th Mizukage, graceful, lethal, deeply unsettled by reports from her own country about former members of the 7 swordsmen appearing in the countryside with golden halos. The 4th Raikage, standing rather than sitting, because sitting required a composure he did not possess, his massive arms folded, his face a thunderstorm looking for somewhere to land. "My brother," I said. The Raikage's voice shook the table. "My brother is gone." Every report says the same thing. The white robes, the golden eyes, the bowing. Someone is going to tell me what we are doing about this before I tear this building apart. The alliance formed. Every shinobi village contributed. Every available jonin. Every active duty Anbu. every special forces operative with a combat record above C rank. The combined military force of the 5 great nations assembled on the central plains between the land of fire and the land of rivers, the last great army the old world would ever field. Danzo acted first. He always acted first. He always moved in the shadows while others deliberated in the light, and he always called it patriotism. And the bodies he left behind always bore the classification stamp that made them disappear from official records. Route deployed. 100 elite operatives, trained from childhood to suppress emotion, identity, and independent thought, in service to the man who remade them. They moved through the eastern forests in coordinated silence. 0 killing intent, 0 chakra signatures above baseline. The perfect assassination force aimed at a target their commander had assessed as a priority threat to Konoha's sovereignty. They found Naruto on the 3rd night. He was sitting on a ridge overlooking a river valley. His paladins were arrayed in the valley below, visible, their halos catching moonlight. It should have looked like an encampment. It looked like a constellation that had chosen to rest on the earth for a while. Routes surrounded him in a sphere of coverage, above, below, flanking, every angle, every escape route covered by operatives whose training rivaled Anbu and whose commitment to the kill exceeded it. They attacked simultaneously, 100 bodies in motion. Blades, jutsu, explosive tags, coordinated kill shots from 15 angles. The combined force of Danzo's life's work aimed at a single point on a ridge above a river. Chronostasis Gregora. 100 golden spheres. The forest went still. Every operative, caught mid-motion, mid-breath, mid-thought, suspended in individual fields of frozen time. Blades extended, hands in seal positions. Masks blank and bodies frozen in the exact shapes of 100 simultaneous murder attempts that had never reached their target. Naruto stood. He walked among them, hands clasped behind his back, expression contemplative. He passed through the frozen forest the way a gardener walks through rows of plants, assessing each one. His soul magic reached through each sphere, reading each agent's core in passing. What he found was damage, deep, structural damage. The reshaping that Danzo's conditioning inflicted on children until the person underneath was buried so deep it might as well have been dead. Broken foundations, wills that had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt into weapons that served a single master. Naruto stopped walking. He looked at the 100 frozen forms around him, and his expression held something that was almost anger. Almost. The faintest edge of it, of genuine displeasure at what someone had done to these people long before Naruto had any chance to decide what they should become. You built your power on other people's pain and called it strength, he said, and the words were aimed at a man who was miles away. What a beautiful waste. He made a choice. Chronoanastasis. The technique deployed across all 100 agents simultaneously, running time backward through each body until it reached the point before Danzo's conditioning had taken hold. Past years of training, past the behavioral modification, past the identity suppression and emotional amputation, and everything that had been done to make these children into weapons. He pushed them backward to who they were before and left them there. The spheres released. 100 people collapsed to the forest floor. They were crying, all of them. Men and women in their 20s and 30s, weeping like the children they had been when the conditioning began, unable to remember their code names or their training or the mission that brought them here. They remembered their real names. They remembered their mothers. They remembered the day someone took them away, and everything after that was a blur of white noise. Naruto left them there. They would find their way to somewhere. They would become people again, in whatever form that took. What they would never become again was weapons in a dead man's hand, because the dead man was next. Naruto found Danzo's root headquarters beneath Konoha by following the soul, that tight, cold, self-serving signature that stood out in Naruto's awareness like a bruise on clean skin. He walked through the village above ground level, through streets where people were sleeping, past the ramen stand where he had eaten as a child, past the academy where he had pretended to be harmless, and he descended. The guards fell to chronostasis without seeing him. The checkpoint seals were irrelevant. They were designed to detect chakra intrusion, and what Naruto carried was as far from chakra as a language is from the silence between words. The corridors opened before him. The locked doors opened. Danzo was in the deepest room, seated behind a desk, his bandaged arm resting on the surface, the arm full of stolen Sharingan eyes, the trophies of a man who built his power from the corpses of people more talented than himself. His single visible eye tracked Naruto's entrance with the readiness of someone who had contingency plans for contingency plans. "So you've come," Danzo said. His voice was level, the voice of a man who has controlled every situation he has entered for 40 years and has not yet absorbed the possibility that this one is different. He activated the first Sharingan, Izanagi. Reality itself rewrote, the technique that traded a Sharingan eye for one alteration to existence, one moment of choosing which version of events was real. The first eye closed permanently in his stolen arm. Naruto had not attacked yet. He was standing in the doorway, watching Danzo burn through his borrowed eyes preemptively, watching the old man attempt to overwrite a future he could feel approaching with the stolen lives of dead Uchiha. Izanagi fired again, the second eye closing, reality flickering around Danzo as the technique tried to find something to alter and found only Naruto standing there, unattacking, unmoving, waiting. "You are borrowing eyes from dead men to delay the inevitable," Naruto said. His voice carried something that was almost wariness, the specific exhaustion of encountering someone who was both evil and boring. The combination offended him on an aesthetic level. Danzo's third Izanagi fired. Fourth, he was burning through them faster now, panic setting in beneath the composure. The animal brain underneath the strategist's mind, recognizing that nothing he did was accomplishing anything because nothing was happening to undo. Naruto reached, soul magic extended across the room, through the air between them, through the desk, through Danzo's bandages and stolen eyes and the decades of stolen power. It reached the soul. Naruto read it in 2 seconds. Every Sharingan stolen from Uchiha corpses in the aftermath of the massacre. Every root child taken from orphanages and molded into weapons before they were old enough to understand what was being taken from them. Every mission he authorized that ended in mass graves. Every decision he called patriotism that was fear wearing a flag. The assassination attempts on the third Hokage. The manipulation of intelligence that prolonged wars for political gain. The simple, ugly truth at the core of Danzo Shimura. A man afraid of being powerless who made everyone around him powerless to compensate. Naruto's hand fell away from the extended reach. His expression was devoid of anger, devoid of contempt, devoid of anything except the specific vacancy of someone who has assessed an object and found it unworthy of even negative emotion. "You have wasted every second of your existence," Naruto said. Chrono bind. The aging started at Danzo's feet. It climbed his body with the unhurried pace of something that did not need to rush because the outcome was predetermined and the victim's opinion was irrelevant. His sandals crumbled, his legs thinned, the stolen arm, all those eyes, all those dead Uchiha withered, and the Sharingan inside it went gray and then went to powder. Danzo activated his fifth Izanagi. The aging paused for one heartbeat, one reality rewrite, and then continued from exactly where it was interrupted. Because Chrono Bind did not operate within the reality that Izanagi could alter, he tried to run. His legs failed at the third step, too aged, too brittled, the muscles atrophying past the point of supporting weight. He tried to form seals. His hands seized at the second sign, fingers too stiff, joints too far gone. The aging reached his chest. His heart, stressed by decades of war and paranoia and the metabolic toll of housing 10 foreign organs, was the first thing to stop. The aging reached his head. His brain went silent with the particular totality of something that was never going to think another thought. Danzo became dust standing up. It took 9 seconds. Naruto turned and left the way he had come. He did not look back. He did not mark the spot. The dust settled on the desk and the chair and the floor, and no one would find this room for 3 weeks. And when they did, they would assume the pile of gray residue was from the filtration system. Now the Alliance. They met him on the Central Plains, the full combined military force of the 5 great nations spread across a valley 3 miles wide. Tens of thousands of shinobi in formation, the Kage at the center. Every legendary fighter still breathing and still free deployed in their best positions. Naruto walked toward them from the eastern ridge, alone at first, his paladins behind him at the tree line. He walked alone because this was a conversation before it was a confrontation, and because he wanted them to see the scale of what they faced. One boy in white, walking toward the last army the world would ever field with the warm expression of someone who had come to do something kind. The Hokage attacked first, a move at full lightning armor speed, the fastest thing in the shinobi world, faster than even his own Kage guard could track. His fist, wrapped in crackling blue-white energy, aimed at Naruto's head with the force that had earned him the title of the fastest man alive. The impact landed. The shockwave flattened the grass for 100 meters. The ground beneath Naruto's feet cratered. Stood with his fist extended, the full force of his legendary speed and strength delivered to the target. Naruto's head had moved 1 inch to the right. A's fist was beside his ear. The shockwave had torn the air apart around them. Naruto's hair was displaced by the pressure wave. His expression had not changed. He looked at the Hokage with those warm blue eyes and said nothing. Then he raised 2 fingers, and golden light wrapped A's lightning armor in a temporal binding that stripped the technique's duration forward through its remaining runtime until the chakra simply ran out. The armor flickered, died. Stood before Naruto unprotected for the first time in 3 decades of combat, and the child reached up and touched his forehead with 1 finger. A's knees buckled. He went down. His eyes went gold before he hit the ground. The Alliance watched. Their fastest Kage, the man they had counted on to land the first blow, to establish that this boy could be touched, could be reached, could be fought, had been converted in 5 seconds. The Tsuchikage launched himself from the rear lines, particle style, the technique that dissolved matter at the atomic level, aimed at Naruto in a cube of disintegrating light. The Mizukage flanked, lava release, the corrosive heat of a technique designed to destroy anything organic or inorganic in its path. Chronoanastasis. Both techniques unhappened. The particle cube deconstructed, its atoms returning to the formation before the jutsu was formed. The lava retreated into the earth it had been summoned from. 2 Kaji-level techniques, fired in coordination, reversed as if they were suggestions that had been politely declined. Naruto's paladins moved forward from the tree line. Itachi's golden Sharingan activated. Genjutsu, golden Tsukuyomi, a converted version of his ultimate technique, spreading across the battlefield in a wave of divine illusion that put shinobi to sleep by the dozens. Their bodies hit the ground gently, lowered by Gaara's golden sand, cradled as they fell, because Naruto did not want them damaged. He wanted them converted, and conversion required intact vessels. Kasame's merged form erupted from the earth beneath a formation of cloud shinobi. Water release at obscene scale, flooding a quarter of the valley in seconds, sweeping bodies off their feet and into the gentle grasp of golden sand that caught them and held them still. Nagato's gravitational control pressed the Mist Village's Anbu division flat against the ground. Shinra Tensei at targeted scale, enough pressure to immobilize without crushing, holding them in place for conversion. The alliance broke. It broke the way ice breaks in spring. Not all at once, but in pieces, sections calving away from the whole, as the structural integrity that held it together failed beyond recovery. Formations scattered, communication lines severed, the coordinated military response that had been planned over weeks dissolved in minutes, because you cannot maintain coordination when your most powerful members are being converted in real time and the enemy's power operates outside every framework you were trained to counter. And through it all, moving through the collapsing army with the warmth of someone walking through a garden, Naruto converted, 1 at a time, sometimes 2. His hand finding chests and foreheads and cheeks, the touch gentle, the light immediate, the transformation complete in seconds. Every Kage, every Anbu captain, every legendary fighter who stood their ground instead of running, each one received the light, and the halo, and the peace that was worse than any wound. Might Guy found him. Guy appeared from the chaos with a specific, radiant presence that defined him in every context, large, loud, his eyes burning with the determination that had carried him through a lifetime of physical achievement. that bordered on the supernatural. His green jumpsuit was torn from the fighting. His hands were bleeding from impacts that would have killed lesser men. His students, the ones who were still free, were somewhere behind him. He squared up in front of Naruto. "I will protect the springtime of their youth." His voice carried across the ruined valley with the force of a man who believed every word he said with his entire body. "I will fight until my body fails. This is my promise." He opened the gates, first, second, third, fourth, the blue chakra surging, the muscle fibers tearing and rebuilding in real time. Fifth, the skin flushing red, the steam beginning to rise. Sixth, the ground cracking beneath his feet from the pressure of his aura alone. Seventh, the blue steam turning indigo, the air around him distorting from heat that exceeded anything natural physics should permit a human body to produce. He moved. At the seventh gate, Might Guy was invisible to everything below Menkyo sharing. His speed exceeded the theoretical maximum of the human nervous system. He hit Naruto 3 times in 1 second, knee, elbow, heel. Each impact carrying enough force to crater reinforced stone, and each one landing with the full commitment of a man who believed absolutely in what he was doing. The impacts were real. Naruto received them the way a mountain receives a storm. His body absorbed the force. His feet pressed deeper into the cratered earth. His expression remained unchanged. Guy opened the 8th gate, the gate of death. Everything changed. The steam went from indigo to emerald, the color of life itself being burned as fuel. Guy's skin split along his forearms and calves, the muscles beneath visible and luminous with redirected life force. The ground within 50 meters became a crater from the pressure of his aura alone. His heartbeat was audible, hammering at a rate that should have been fatal 10 times over, each beat pushed through by pure will. He was killing himself. Every second in the 8th gate was a second subtracted from the time he had left to exist. He was burning his life into power because the people behind him, his students, his comrades, the village he loved, were worth burning for. He threw everything he had. The technique was a punch. The Evening Elephant's successor, the ultimate strike of the 8 Gates formation, compressed into a single blow that exceeded every measurement of force the shinobi world had ever recorded. The air turned to plasma in the punch's wake. The ground became a trench. The impact point approached Naruto at a speed that broke the relationship between distance and time. Naruto raised both hands. Chrono Anastasis. He did not block the technique. He did not dodge it. He reversed the damage. The reversal applied to Guy himself. The burning, the cellular destruction, the life being consumed second by second. The 8th gate's toll ran backward. The tears in Guy's muscles closed. The split skin sealed. The emerald steam retreated. The heartbeat slowed from fatal to fierce to normal. The gate closed, forced shut by time itself running backward through the damage it had caused, restoring the body that had been willing to die to the state it had been in before the decision was made. Guy stood on the battlefield. Breathing hard, the gates closed, his body intact. His fists were still raised. His eyes were still burning with everything he was. And Naruto stood in front of him with one hand extended, resting against Guy's broad chest. "Your soul is beautiful," Naruto said. His voice carried something that was the warmest, saddest thing anyone still free had ever heard him express. Something that genuinely marveled at what it was touching. A soul built entirely on love for other people and the joy of pushing limits that the universe said could not be pushed. You are everything I wish humanity could be. The dedication, the warmth, the willingness to burn for people who will never know how close you came to ash. Guy's eyes, wide, fierce, alive, stared into Naruto's face. His fists were still raised. His body was still ready. Everything in him was still committed to the fight, still believing in the springtime of youth, still burning with the conviction that love and effort and the refusal to give up could overcome anything. "You think resistance is strength," Naruto said softly. "That is the first thing I will teach you is wrong. Soul magic, paladin." Right Guy's conversion did not quiet his body. It did not still the energy or diminish the physicality. What changed was the thing underneath, the person who chose to burn, the will that selected its targets, the love that decided who was worth dying for. That was rewritten. The body remained at full capacity. The taijutsu mastery remained absolute. The strength remained legendary. The soul behind it all now served one purpose. Guy's fists lowered, his back straightened, his expression, that massive, gleaming, passionate face, smoothed into something that was still smiling, because Guy's face was built to smile. But the smile was different now. It was warm, and it was complete, and it was hollow at the center, the way a halo is hollow. The halo formed behind Might Guy's head, and it looked, somehow, exactly right. Like his personality was so bright that even the divine conversion's aesthetic became something vibrant rather than blank. The gold was warmer on Guy, the devotion less empty, the shell more convincing. That made it worse. On a ridgeline overlooking the valley, 5 members of the remaining free forces watched. Shikamaru was there, the shadow user who had been at the Valley of the End months ago and found nothing. He watched Guy's halo form, and his face did something it had never done before. It went completely blank. The genius brain behind those lazy eyes stopped calculating because there was nothing left to calculate. Beside him, Ino gripped Choji's arm hard enough to bruise. Choji's bag of chips hit the ground without him noticing. They ran. Everyone who could still run, ran. It did not save them. Nothing saved anyone. The world that had built itself on the foundation of individual choice was collapsing structure by structure, and the thing doing the collapsing had a warm smile and all the time in existence. When the valley fell silent, when the last free Kage's eyes went gold, when the last Anbu captain bowed, Naruto stood at the center of it all. 12 original paladins plus dozens of new conversions arrayed behind him in concentric circles of golden devotion. The world does not need more warriors, he said. It needs fewer choices. Black Zetsu made its move on a Tuesday that no one would remember as anything but the day it stopped mattering. It emerged from the earth beneath Naruto's feet, the ancient will of Kaguya, wrapped in its black mass, reaching upward with the intention to merge with and subsume the thing that had dismantled every contingency it had built across centuries. Its intelligence was vast. Its patience was ancient. Its plan had always been simple. Absorb the host, reach the power, use it to complete the resurrection. Naruto let the contact happen. He felt Black Zetsu's surface touch his ankle, felt the absorption attempt begin. That ancient will reaching for him, trying to merge with his chakra, his body, his consciousness. He stood still and let it reach. And then from the inside of the contact, he read it. What he found was nothing. In the place where a soul should be, where grief or love or ambition or even cruelty would exist in anything that had ever truly lived, there was only programming. Cold, ancient, manufactured devotion to a dead god. A will without a self. A purpose without a person. Something created to serve a function that had been building toward a conclusion for longer than human civilization had existed, and in all that time had never once generated a genuine feeling. Naruto looked down at the black mass clinging to his ankle. "You are simply empty," he said. His voice carried the devastating weight of a diagnosis delivered to something that cannot understand it. There was never anything to save. Time reversal. The golden light hit Black Zetsu at the point of contact. It ran backward through the creature, not through its body but through its existence. Every moment of its millennia-long manipulation rewound. Every chess piece it had moved returned to its original position in its timeline. Every choice it had made unhappened. The reversal pushed past its creation, past the will that made it, past the intention that preceded the action, until it reached the moment before the concept of Black Zetsu existed, and left it there. The black mass on Naruto's ankle thinned, lost coherence, became less real between one heartbeat and the next. Its physical presence fading as the temporal foundation it stood on was erased from underneath it. 1 second it was there. The next second it was a stain. The second after that, there was nothing. The ankle was clean. The earth beneath was ordinary dirt. Black Zetsu did not die. It unhappened. The difference was total. Death leaves a body. Unhappening leaves nothing. No residue, no record, no evidence that the thing erased had ever occupied space or time or consequence. The oldest manipulator in the world, the will that had moved civilizations like chess pieces across millennia, ceased to be something that was, that had been, that would be remembered. Naruto wiped his ankle on the grass, and from across the valley, against all expectation, against the weight of what had just occurred, Laughter. Orochimaru emerged from a cave at the base of the cliff face. He was thin and wrong, and wearing a body that barely resembled anything natural, and he was laughing. The sound was hollow, joyless. The sound of something that had once been genius and was now just a broken man watching the conclusion of a game he had fled from and been unable to escape. He stood in the valley's dusty light and looked at Naruto across the distance between them. His yellow eyes, still slit-pupiled, still intelligent, still carrying the remnants of a mind that had once been the sharpest in the world, did their eternal calculation. Assessment, evaluation, conclusion. "I ran," Orochimaru said. His voice carried across the empty space between them. "I told myself it was strategic, that I was preserving my research, that there would come a moment when I could act." He looked at the converted valley, at the kneeling world, at the paladins, at the absence where Black Zetsu had been. "There is no such moment coming, is there?" Naruto watched him. "No," he said. Orochimaru nodded. Something in his expression was almost peaceful. The peace of a man who has been running for so long that stopping feels like arriving somewhere, even if the somewhere is terrible. "Are you going to convert me?" "No, you are too rotten to be a paladin. You know this." "Yes." A pause. The yellow eyes blinked once. "Will you kill me?" Naruto looked at him, considered. The man who dissected children, who stole immortality from stolen eyes and stolen bodies, who carved living people apart for knowledge and called the screaming a necessary cost. A soul that was rotten through, too rotten for paladin service, too rotten for divine architecture. "No," Naruto said. "You will watch." He turned away. Orochimaru remained standing in the valley's empty light. His hands hung at his sides. His yellow eyes tracked Naruto's departure with the specific, horrible understanding of someone who has just been given the worst possible punishment disguised as mercy. The man who wanted to live forever, left alive, in a world he could observe and never participate in. Surrounded by the golden-eyed completion of something he had fled from and never escaped, he lowered himself to the cave floor, pressed his back to the cold stone, drew his knees up like a child. This was his eternity now. Watching, unable to be converted because he was too broken, unable to die because death required someone willing to deliver it, unable to participate because participation required a world that still allowed choices. He sat in his cave, and the converted world hummed its golden hum outside. And Orochimaru, for the first time in his 50-year career of running from endings, stopped running. The world went gold. It happened over weeks rather than days, the conversion spreading outward from the central plains in waves of gentle, inevitable transformation. Naruto's paladins moved through the nations the way dawn moves across a landscape, illuminating everything they touched, reaching every corner, leaving nothing in shadow, village by village, town by town. Every soul that Naruto's detection identified as intact enough for conversion received the light. Those too broken, the truly rotten, the ones whose souls held nothing worth preserving, were given what he had given Root, the reversal. Pushed backward to before their corruption, released into an earlier version of themselves that could then be converted without the weight of their damage. Within a month, 3 of the 5 nations were complete. Within 6 weeks, all 5. The children were the easiest. Their souls were the least corrupted, the newest, the most flexible, the ones with the fewest layers of damage to peel back before reaching something worth remaking. Naruto did the children himself. Everyone. His hand on each small head, his expression that same terrible warmth, his voice gentle as he told each child that they would never feel pain again. The parents watched their children receive the light and then received it themselves, and then there was nobody left to object. The world that emerged from the conversion was identical in every physical way to the world that had existed before it. The buildings stood. The roads ran between towns. The ramen stands opened in the morning and served customers who ordered and ate and paid with the efficiency of people going about their lives. The academy still operated, children learning to throw kunai and form seals, their golden eyes focused, their techniques perfect, their motivation singular. The difference was underneath. The difference was in the silence where argument should be, in the absence of raised voices in the marketplace, in the way disputes were resolved before they began because the parties involved no longer possessed the capacity for disagreement, in the way children played without cruelty, in the way couples walked together with matching golden eyes and identical expressions of serene devotion aimed at a direction none of them would ever know they shared. The streets were clean. The wars were over. The graves, all of them, every graveyard in every village, received their last occupants. No more would ever be dug. Every smile reached the muscles it was supposed to reach. Every laugh sounded at the correct volume and the correct timing. The observable behavior of happiness was present in every interaction. And underneath each smile, underneath each laugh, there was the golden hum of something that wore joy's face without possessing joy's architecture. A child in the playground of what had been Konoha's academy laughed as she swung from a climbing frame. The laugh was real, the muscles engaged, the breath expelled, the neural pathways that produced the sound of joy firing in correct sequence. An observer could record that laugh and play it for a psychologist, and the psychologist would identify it as genuine. The child had no opinion about whether to laugh. The laugh happened because the situation warranted it, and the paladin architecture recognized that laughter was the appropriate response and generated it with perfect fidelity to what laughter was supposed to sound like. The difference between that and real laughter was invisible and infinite. Naruto sat on the Hokage monument, on the fourth stone head, his father's face carved into the mountain before he was born, before the ceiling, before any of it. He sat in the same spot where he had meditated 4 years ago and felt the village beneath him and planned its salvation. The planning was over. Below him, Konoha hummed. The golden frequency of a converted population, tens of thousands of souls all resonating at the same pitch, the same warmth, the same steady absence of suffering that Naruto had promised himself he would deliver since the night he stood in an alley at 8 years old and watched Anbu squads kill each other over interpretations of duty, his paladins arrayed behind him on the mountain's face. All of them. Kurama's golden form visible in the sky above the monument. 9 tails of divine light spread across the clouds like an aurora that would never fade. The 9 tails in eternal manifestation, the most powerful creature in the world, reduced to a permanent fixture of the horizon. Beautiful and empty, and there because its master found it aesthetically pleasing to have a god's shield visible from anywhere in the village. Nagato stood further back, his skeletal frame straight, his golden rinnegan reflecting the sunset. The eyes of the Sage of Six Paths aimed in perpetual devotion at the boy who had taken them. Beside him, Konan, golden origami paper folding and refolding around her shoulders like living art, each sheet carrying the ghost of a love that now pointed in a single direction, Itachi at Naruto's right shoulder. His golden Sharingan observing the village below with the perfect recall and absolute obedience of the greatest Uchiha, reduced to a watchman for a kingdom he had no opinion about. Kasame at his left, Samahada humming against his back, Gaara behind, golden sand drifting in the evening air, Zabuza and Haku, together as always. B, standing somewhere in the formation, his body still, his mouth still forming rhythms that served one subject and one subject only. Guy, at rest in the back rank. The body that had burned brighter than any other human body in history, standing in perfect paladin attention, the green jumpsuit replaced by white robes, the smile still on his face because Guy's face was incapable of anything else. But the smile was the empty kind, the beautiful, terrible, empty kind, Sasuke, standing where he had stood since the Valley of the End, at Naruto's left, one step behind, his golden eyes forward, his halo steady, the last Uchiha converted before any of the others except Kurama, walking in divine service for months now without a single thought that did not belong to his master. Naruto looked down at the village. He closed his eyes, felt the souls, all of them, the same frequency, that warm gold hum, even impermanent. No spikes, no dips. The flat, golden ocean of a world that no longer knew how to suffer, because the thing that made suffering possible had been removed from every living mind. He opened his eyes. On the roof of the building across the street from the monument's base, a figure stood. Kakashi Hatake. He was thinner than he had been. The months of evasion had cost him. The perpetual motion of staying ahead of something that did not need to hurry. The constant awareness that every day was borrowed time. His Jonin vest was worn. His mask was the same. His visible eye was tired and steady and looking up at the monument where Naruto sat with an expression that had moved past fear into something else entirely. Acceptance. The specific, terrible acceptance of a man who has known for a long time that this moment would arrive and has spent his borrowed time making peace with it rather than preparing a defense. Naruto opened his eyes and looked back. The distance between them was 2 rooftops and 30 meters of evening air. The sunset painted them both in gold, unintentional symmetry that underlined the moment. Kakashi's hand rested on a kunai at his hip, a gesture born of muscle memory rather than intent. He knew it would do nothing. He held it the way you hold a familiar object for comfort when comfort is the last thing available. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said. The warmth in his voice was genuine. It had always been genuine. The tragedy of Naruto Uzumaki, the reincarnation of Lucius Zogratis, was that his love was never false. It was just incompatible with the continued existence of the thing it loved. You lasted longer than I expected. That says something about you. Kakashi's visible eye held steady. No tremor, no wavering. The eye of a man who had survived 1,000 battles and had decided that this, the last thing he would face, deserved the same composure. Does it change anything? He asked. No, Naruto said. His expression was soft, full of something that looked like respect and felt like a eulogy already being delivered. But it matters to me. He stood. He moved from the monument's edge to the rooftop where Kakashi stood, crossing the distance on foot, walking across air that hardened beneath his steps, because there was nothing to dodge and no speed necessary, and the moment deserved the gravity of an unhurried approach. He stood in front of Kakashi, 12 years old, and looking up at the man who had been his teacher, the man who had felt Naruto's hand on his chest during the bell test, the man who had written a report and been too afraid to send it. You knew, Naruto said. From the bell test, you knew what I was. Yes, Kakashi said. You were afraid to report it. Yes, because you knew whoever came to stop me would lose. A pause. The sunset strengthened by one shade. Somewhere below them, a converted family sat down to dinner with matching golden eyes and spoke in the pleasant, even tones of people who would never disagree about anything ever again. Yes, Kakashi said. Naruto looked at him. Read his soul one final time, that vast, grief-laden thing that he had first touched on a training ground when this all began. It was the same soul, still carrying Obito's crushed body, still carrying Rin's blood, still carrying his father's corpse and his sensei's cold form, and every year of going through the motions of living, while something inside him had been gone since the Third War. The grief was the man. It had always been the man. Remove the grief, and the person who chose to keep living despite it, the person who showed up to teach and to fight and to exist in a world that had taken everything, would cease to exist in any meaningful way. I told you, Naruto said gently. When my kingdom comes, I will erase that pain. Kakashi closed his eye. The one visible, tired, steady eye, the eye that had watched the bell test and the bridge and the Chunin exams in the Valley of the End, closed. His hand left the kunai at his hip. His shoulders settled. His body released the tension it had been carrying since the morning of the bell test when a 12-year-old froze his arm in golden light and read his soul through his flak jacket. I know you believe that, he said. His voice was even. The voice of a man who has made peace with something he cannot prevent. I know you're not lying. I never lie, Naruto said. Lying requires uncertainty. He raised his hand. Kakashi did not move. His eye remained closed. His body remained still. The last free man in Konoha, the last person who remembered what it felt like to choose, stood on a rooftop at sunset and let the hand approach with the composure of someone who has already said goodbye to themselves inside their own head. Soul magic, paladin. The light entered through Naruto's palm and found the grief. It was immense, a lifetime's worth. Obito's eye, given in sacrifice and then given to Kakashi as a burden he carried for 20 years. Rin's death, the girl who chose to die on his hand rather than become a weapon. His father's shame and the blood on the floor, and the years of being the orphan of a disgraced hero. Minato-sensei's last smile before the ceiling. every year after, every Anbu mission, every assassination, every student he failed, because passing them meant sending them into the same machine that had ground him down to nothing. The grief was what kept him alive. The grief was the reason to keep going, because the people who caused it deserved to be remembered by someone who loved them. And if Kakashi let the grief go, the remembering would lose its weight. The light took it anyway. The grief dissolved the way morning mist dissolves when the sun rises. The weight evaporating, the burden lifting, the thing that had been Kakashi's spine for 20 years simply ceasing to hurt. The memories remained. Obito's face remained. Ren's smile remained. But the ache attached to them, the love expressed as constant, endless, chosen pain, faded to nothing. And with it, the person who chose to carry that pain every single day faded too. Kakashi's face smoothed. The tension lines around his visible eye relaxed. His shoulders settled into the perfect posture of paladin alignment. His hands fell to his sides with the relaxed readiness that came from no longer needing to decide when to reach for a weapon. His eye opened. It was gold. The halo formed, faint, patient, glowing behind his silver hair with the steady warmth of a promise finally kept. The promise Naruto had made on a training ground when he was 12 years old, and the world was still pretending to be salvageable. Kakashi bowed. The motion was graceful. It was the bow of a man whose body had been built for combat and repurposed for devotion without losing an ounce of its capability. Everything Kakashi was, the copy ninja, the 1,000 techniques, the Sharingan's legacy, the combat genius, remained. Everything Kakashi chose to be, the teacher, the mourner, the man who kept going because the dead deserved a witness, was gone. Naruto lowered his hand. He looked at Kakashi's bowed form for a long moment. The sunset was fading behind the mountains. The first stars were visible, tiny points of light above a world that would never again produce a poet with the capacity to write about them freely. He turned from Kakashi. He walked to the edge of the monument, to the place where the fourth Hokage's stone nose jutted over the village, and he looked down at Konoha. The streetlights were coming on. Golden-eyed families were finishing their dinners. Children were being put to bed by parents who would never lie awake with unnamed fears. The village hummed. The entire world hummed. That warm, golden, steady frequency of a species that had been cured of the disease of independent will. Every nation at peace. Every blade sheathed. Every grave the last one that would ever hold a body placed there by violence. The sky above was clear, and the stars were the same stars that had looked down on every war and every massacre and every act of human cruelty since the first person raised a weapon against another person and called it necessary. Those stars would look down on nothing like that ever again. Naruto breathed in. The air was clean, the specific, impossible cleanness of a world where nothing burned that was not supposed to burn, and no one screamed that was not supposed to scream. He closed his eyes. He opened them. The world is terribly broken, he said to the stars, to the hum, to the golden eyes looking up at him from every window and every doorway and every rooftop in the village below. He said it the way you say something that has already been fixed, past tense in everything except the grammar. But do not worry. He smiled. The smile was warm. It was genuine. It was the smile of a man standing at the center of something he had built from the screaming raw materials of a broken species, looking out at the silence he had made and finding it beautiful, finding it complete, finding it everything he had ever intended it to be, since the night the memory settled into an 8-year-old skull like a crown, finding the head it was always meant for. I have healed it all. The stars burned above him. The village hummed below. The wind came through and moved his white robes, and the halos of his paladins caught the light. And for one moment the entire world was golden and warm and perfect, and missing the one thing that had ever made it worth the trouble of existing. The silence that followed was total and permanent. And it wore the face of peace, the way a corpse wears the face of sleep, perfectly, convincingly, with the single crucial difference that nothing would ever change about it again. The era of the true, perfect humanity had begun. And in a cave at the world's edge, a yellow-eyed man who would live forever pressed his back against the stone and watched the golden sky and understood, with the specific horror of someone who had spent his life fearing death, that there were things worse than dying. There were things worse than ending. There was being left behind in a world that had stopped being a world and become a painting. Beautiful and frozen and utterly, irrevocably still, the stars wheeled above the cave. The golden hum reached even here. Orochimaru closed his eyes, and the story ended the way all stories end, when the person who caused the ending is still standing in the middle of it, smiling, with a silence that had nothing left to say.
Thanks for watching the full movie all the way through. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next deep dive into wild what-if crossovers. Drop a comment and tell me what part stayed with you the longest.